I can't see it all.
I'll hit the gas as soon as we get to the we're live. Oh, there's this one too. Welcome. Tonight you will notice our governing board meeting is held in person. I would like to note that we have a limited number of individuals in the room to be properly distanced, and we are all wearing our masks. The mask protocol tonight is to take off your mask while you speak to provide the clarity we need in this meeting because it's being live streamed. If any of the governing board members or individuals in the room are not feeling well, we ask that you excuse yourself from the meeting and watch or participate online. So is everybody feeling okay? Mm-hmm. All right. Well then, I call to order this special meeting of the Governing Board for the Scottsdale Unified School District. It is Tuesday, July 7, 2020, and the time is 5:05 p.m. I will have a roll call starting on my right.
Jan Michael Greenberg.
Sandy Kravitz.
Barbara Pilleberg.
Patty Beckman. And Allison Beckham. All 5 Governing Board members are present, and we have a quorum. All rise. Vice President Beckman, would you please lead us in the pledge? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome Dr. Scott Menzel, our new incoming superintendent. Welcome to Scottsdale. Welcome to SUSD and our community.
Thank you.
It's our first official board meeting, and we're looking forward to it. We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Do I have any changes to the agenda? No changes? All right. I move to approve the agenda as presented. Do I have a second? Second. Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We will be moving on to our information discussion item. Discussion item A, discussion regarding the reopening of schools for the 2020-2021 school year. Please note this is a discussion only tonight. We will be discussing timing of the approvals later in the agenda. The Governing Board will review and discuss proposed teaching and learning models, safety measures, social and emotional support plans, and start date for delivery of instruction. We will ask the Governing Board to hold questions to the end of the PowerPoint presentation. Dr. Menzel, do you have some comments before introducing our presenters?
I do. Thank you, President Beckham, Vice President Beckman, and members of the Governing Board. I am really excited for the opportunity to get started here in Scottsdale. It's been an interesting 3 months of transition, thinking back to March 17th when you finalized the hiring decision, which was one day after schools were closed here in Arizona, and we're still dealing with the challenges of COVID. So tonight, we are excited to bring forward the recommendations that are a result of work that started at the end of this last school year, after May 21st, where our Incident Command Systems team and the 3 subcommittees met regularly throughout the course of the summer to put together the plans. And the options in front of us this evening reflect the best that we can suggest for our parents in a less than optimal environment. So as we go through the evening tonight, I want to express my appreciation for all of the hours that have been put in by so many members of our community, both our internal staff as well as the other committee members from outside the school district. Secondly, I want to say that it's really important to all of us that we hear from feedback, suggestions, and questions from both our internal and external stakeholders, our parents, our teachers, our support staff. And to that end, we've introduced a new tool called Let's Talk. And tonight, the URL for Let's Talk is going to be on the video screen so that any member that's watching this governing board meeting will be able to log into that website and share their suggestions, raise questions that they have, provide comments. And so we encourage anyone who's listening tonight or watching this video even after tonight to take advantage of Let's Talk and we will be responding to those questions, comments, and suggestions, and taking those things into consideration as we finalize the decisions moving forward. Finally, the presentation tonight represents the framework for our Return to Learn plan. We've received many detailed questions over the last few days in conversations with staff, and we don't have all the answers to the detailed questions, but we want people to know that once the framework is formally adopted, we will finalize a more detailed plan in order to answer those questions. With that, as a district, we are committed to health, safety, and well-being of our students and staff. Our core purpose is to ensure all individual learners reach their full potential. As an educational entity, we want nothing more than to welcome students back to our campuses, but in this current environment, it has been necessary to look at various models. And to that end, I'd like to introduce Dr. Kim Guerin, Assistant Superintendent of Education Services, to kick off our presentation. Dr. Guerin.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel. President Beckham, Vice President Beckman, Governing Board members, Dr. Menzel, Ms. Wagner, Cabinet, and virtual guests. Thank you for joining us tonight as we present Scottsdale Unified School District Return to Learn plan. We miss our students and want them to return in a safe and healthy environment. We want to bring the Scottsdale Unified School District family together again to focus on learning and to ensure all individual learners reach their full potential. As a school district, Scottsdale Unified has a robust emergency response team led by Dr. Melissa Sakos that works proactively to prepare for any emergency facing our school. In February, Dr. Sakos gathered the incident command team together in response to COVID-19. As school closed, she instituted 3 subcommittees to begin work on a Return to Learn plan. These subcommittees worked tirelessly at the end of May and throughout the month of June. And what was so interesting is every time we took 2 steps forward, our existing situation, our new normal changed and shifted, and we had to shift with it. So I truly want to honor the work of these 3 subcommittees. I had the privilege of leading the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee that focused on providing models and opportunities to return to learn. Mr. Dennis Rayler, our Director of Facilities, focused on logistics and operations and much of our safety protocol procedures. And Director of Student Services, Shannon Cron, focused on social emotional support of not only students, but staff and families. So we worked separately and in tandem together to develop the models that we will present to you tonight. The list is long for all of the SUSD family members that gave of their time in the month of June. Hours upon hours of work as we navigated our new normal and shifted with the changes, took input and feedback from many stakeholders, and tried to really process how decisions would impact each student in every school in the community that they love. So I want to really thank our subcommittee members. I wish they were here tonight. Some of them I met online, and I feel like I absolutely know them, and I can't wait to see them face to face, to shake their hand and even give them a hug and say thank you, because we all worked through this together. So the list is long, and these are only our formal members. We had special guests coming through from different departments, and we brought in a ton of principals to really give input into, would this really work on your campus? So again, I want to thank everyone out there that worked so hard on this. We have priorities for reopening, and these priorities are tried and true regardless of our changing situation, and they have helped us to navigate through the month of June, and they will continue to guide us as we plan to reopen. The first is really our core mission as a school district, to ensure rigorous, relevant, and responsive instruction throughout all the learning models that is aligned with SUSD's core purpose and values that our community has come to expect. We, of course, need to prioritize the safety of all of our stakeholders. That is on everyone's minds as we take each step forward. Based on the Teaching and Learning Survey, we felt we needed to provide SUSD families with choices to best meet their needs. The survey responses are diverse, and we realize everyone's situation is unique, and so we wanted to respond to that and provide options that families felt confident in. Throughout all of this, we are a public school district, and we need to ensure fiscal responsibility in our decision-making and understand that we have to work within our current constraints. On our mind is social-emotional support, the impact of the pandemic on our students, on our families, on our staff, on our SUSD family. So this has been on our mind, and we have been proactively working through that with Dr. Sackos and Ms. Cron to guide us. We will provide ongoing, relevant professional development for teachers and staff on best teaching practices. And Dr. Tim Fountain has a new is ongoing and very important.
Survey. Tonight, I'm sharing with you the district-wide results. Principals received their school results and comments 2 weeks ago. On this slide, you can see our response rate by counts of surveys completed, the percentage these counts represent in the total number of surveys received, and finally, the percentage of stakeholders who responded. We had strong representation across all groups, and especially among teachers and parents. Our response rate on this survey was nearly 4 times higher than that of the Hanover survey. Here you can see the response rates by learning community. The highest rates were from the Desert Mountain and Chaparral learning communities, but our response rates from the other learning communities also increased from the Hanover survey. We had volunteers distribute paper copies of surveys at meal distribution sites to survey our families that might not have access to taking a survey electronically. One of the questions on the survey asked our stakeholders to indicate their level of agreement with a full, on-site, in-person return to school. On this slide, you can see the overall results on this question in the top left-hand corner, followed by the results across different grade levels, disaggregated across the various levels. The blue columns indicate the percentage of agreement. From this, we saw that overall, parents and students were in agreement at higher levels than teachers and classified staff with a full on-site return in person at the time of this survey. The results varied by school type, with middle school teachers being the most concerned with the full return on-site option. For the hybrid model of school taking place both online and in person, generally, staff were more positive about this option than parents across all levels. Parents of elementary students in particular did not strongly advocate for the hybrid model at the time of the survey. Finally, there was a question regarding enrolling in Scottsdale online learning full-time, and approximately 20% of our parents indicated a preference for this option across all levels. So some conclusions. After initial review, a majority of our parents and students are aligned in support of a full return, again, as of the time in June when this survey was administered. 20% of our students and parents were interested in online, Scottsdale Online, which matched the statewide results. Teachers support hybrid or online instruction in much greater numbers than we see in different stakeholder groups. The survey results ultimately support the concept of multiple options to meet the unique needs of each SUSD family. As a result, the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee developed 3 models of learning for return to learn. And with that, I turn this back over to Dr. Guerin.
Thank you, Dr. Bachna. And as Dr. Bachna mentioned, the survey took place mid-June, and I received a number of emails with stakeholders wanting to share that they had changed their mind and had a different feeling about return. So we know the situation is fluid, but we are proud to present 3 options for you tonight. We will review each of our return to learn models, which are full return on-site, hybrid, and full online. Later this week, hopefully Friday, we will ask families to select a model for each child. The full return on-site model is for pre-K through 12. This model is for when we are able to reopen schools. It is full-time, full-day, in-school attendance. Appropriate safety measures such as physical distancing and masks. Masks will be required by all students and staff on campus. And Mr. Dennis Rayler will be going over in much greater detail the physical distancing, the masks, and the safety precautions. All students in SUSD, regardless of model, will receive a district-issued Chromebook or computer to check out. It is so important that students do not share a device, and in order to navigate this new way of learning, having their own device that is similar to, so that every teacher knows what every student has access to is critical. So I am really grateful to our technology department who proactively ordered additional devices in June, knowing that school districts would be ordering a ton possibly in July and August. So that proactive measure put us in a terrific place to be one-to-one devices for all of our students. Some additional details on the full return on site. Again, students will attend school full-time on campus. Full return is offered at all our school sites. Pre-K programs and preschool programs are offered at select locations, as usual. Arizona State standards following SUSD curriculum will be taught by our highly qualified, talented SUSD teachers and adjusted to differentiate to students' needs. Of course, increased health and safety practices for all students, staff, and families is a concern and a priority. And it's important to note in this full return model that full social distancing cannot be guaranteed. We will focus on social emotional learning throughout this model. We continue to learn more and more about COVID-19, and recently the American Academy of Pediatrics came out with some new guidance suggesting that 3 feet of physical distancing with everyone wearing masks provides sufficient protection. There are benefits and challenges for all of our models because, of course, what we really want to do is get back to how school was. So as we navigate these challenges, I want to be very transparent to families on the benefits and the challenges so they can make the best decision for their family. So benefits for full return, of course, students learn well in a classroom. It will feel a sense of normalcy and consistency for students to return to school 5 days a week. They will have interaction and socialization with their peers and build relationships with their teachers that they get to see in person. And of course, when you think of collaborative learning, collaboration, project-based learning, of course, working with others in person is optimal, though that is challenging in regards to our new safety protocol. One of the challenges, of course, is that we cannot guarantee 6 feet of social distancing, but we feel very confident in the safety practices we are putting in place. The next model is hybrid. And this model went through so many different versions and changes. And you'll notice most districts are not offering a hybrid model. It is simply extremely complicated to make it work with our current resources. We cannot add additional classrooms in 1 month to a building. And we also cannot find 100 new teachers in a month. So when you think about trying to have a hybrid model and to make it work within your current resources, it is extremely challenging. And I want to thank this subcommittee because they navigated this, and we had to continually modify, and they never gave up, and they continued to persevere. And I don't think we landed where we wished we could with our current reality, but we are very proud of our creativity and that we actually have a hybrid model K-12. We're really proud of that, and I think there's a lot of really strengths in this model. It is a combination of in-class learning and remote learning at home on district-issued devices. So I have to have a graphic to explain this one because it is complicated. This is our hybrid for elementary and K-8. So let's pretend that I am a teacher at Laguna Elementary School. So I have a group of 5th grade students. I have 28 of them, and I'm going to be a hybrid model teacher. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 14 of my students will join my classroom for in-person learning. Wednesday and Friday, I will teach the other 14 students for in-person learning. On Monday, all 28 students will be online with me for synchronous and asynchronous learning. Synchronous learning is when you are live with your teacher and classmates. Asynchronous learning is when you are accessing the curriculum on your own selected time. A truly scientifically research-based appropriate online learning program has both of those. So we could take Monday as an opportunity for social emotional support, to provide some additional special areas or electives since students will only be on campus 2 days a week, and also work with the whole group of 28 students. When my students are at home and I'm teaching the other group, we would work on a flipped classroom model. A flipped classroom model is research-based, innovative, and something some of our really innovative, creative, talented teachers have done in the brick and mortar classroom before COVID-19. And what this model is when you're learning at home, you're prepping for the next day. You're reading a book, you're researching online, you're developing an opinion, you're crafting discussion questions for your peers, you're working on your own project. When you go into class the next day, you may participate in a Socratic seminar. You're going to apply your learning. You're going to ask your neighbors the discussion questions you crafted at home. So it's a robust way to optimize the time you are in class. So the time you are in class is not the time that you sit and listen to a lecture. You can watch a tape lecture at home. It's harder to apply your learning in this robust way, and that is the flip model. We will rely on our teaching and learning coaches and experts to work hand in hand with these teachers. There's a couple caveats to this that are important to know. One teacher is going to do this whole thing. So that takes a lot of talent and creativity because as a 5th grade teacher at Laguna, I have to create my live lessons and I have to create my online lessons for when the students aren't with me, and I have to create my Monday lessons for when I have all 28. So that takes really some talent, and we know we have the talent in SUSD. The other piece is, if at Laguna only 4 parents are interested in the hybrid, we cannot pull one of our Laguna 5th grade teachers to teach hybrid to 4 students. If we have 3 teachers at Laguna, we have to have enough student interest in the hybrid model to run that classroom. So it is contingent on parent interest. So we're going to have to navigate that, and that's why the data from parents on what their choices are is critical, because we have to manage staffing, and Dr. Bowman and his team have to staff this model. So we need to know who is interested in it, and there has to be enough numbers for it to work, for us to be fiscally responsible and manage it with the resources we have. The The middle and high school example is quite different. When you look at the elementary, I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Okay. For the middle and high school example, instead of reducing class size, you're reducing your time on campus, and you're reducing the time on campus where there are larger populations of students. We tried to make a flipped model work, or 15 students at a time in a high school class with all of the specializations, all the changing of classes, all the credit-bearing courses, all the programs. And what we landed on is something that we already do, and we do it really well. In our high schools, we already offer the ability for students to take some classes in person and take some classes with Scottsdale Online. Before, they would go to a computer lab on campus to take their Scottsdale Online classes. Now, if I'm student A, I can go to school for 3 classes that I really want to attend in person. Maybe I struggle in algebra, and I don't think I can take an algebra class online. I really need that teacher in front of me. So I need to make sure that one of my classes in person is algebra. I take 3 classes. I head home, or I swing by the cafeteria to pick up a sack lunch, which we would offer, and take my 3 afternoon classes online. This does a couple things. First of all, we're expecting a reduction in student numbers by about 20% based on our survey data of who is going to go online. So if you imagine a typical middle school or a typical high school, that's going to be reduced by 20%. And we're so confident in that because neighboring districts are seeing 20% all around the state. So we feel pretty solid on that. And by the way, that's over 4,000 students in SUSD. So take a pause for that. It's certainly a great expansion to that program. So think 20% are not there. And then if we have a healthy amount of students participating in hybrid, I'm going to have less in the morning, less in the afternoon, and less in lunch. So even though it doesn't potentially explicitly reduce class size, it very much could. And it does reduce the number of students passing in classes and so forth. If I'm student B, and my 16-year-old son would love this one, I'd be online at home, come to school late, maybe sleep in a little bit, and be at school after lunch for the PM. What's nice about this model, it is not contingent on interest. It's something we can do right away because we can manage the staffing with how many students want to take classes in Scottsdale Online. So if we have 1 student in a high school that wants to do this, we can do that. So there's real flexibility here and opportunity, and it was the best way we could land a hybrid in middle and high school. So just to quickly review a few key points on hybrid. For the K-5 and K-8 hybrid, we have to have sufficient enrollment numbers at each campus with that grade level to determine availability. We also need parents to know that students would participate in the school lunch program with all the precautions and enhanced safety practices, and they would participate in special areas with their class on the 2 days a week that they're in school. Middle and high school hybrid, students can participate in school lunch or pick up a sack lunch, and it is a blend of homeschool instruction. So sometimes there's a little bit of confusion here. So if I'm taking algebra, English, and band, first, second, and third period at Arcadia, I will do that Monday through Friday with my Arcadia teachers. When I go home for my online instruction, I will have SUSD teachers that could or could not be from Arcadia. There's so many options in online, depending on the classes I pick, that I would be with Scottsdale Online teachers in the afternoon. So just to be clear on how that works. There are benefits and challenges with hybrid. So it is trying to be as flexible as possible, of course. Students will benefit from learning in a classroom even part of the time, right? So going 2 days a week provides some of that socialization, some of that return to normalcy. It does in the K-8 and K-5 model, it limits the number of students in a classroom because elementary students in particular spend a majority of their day in their classroom. So instead of 28 students, there would be 14. The challenge is our students will need parental support when they're home learning, especially our elementary students. And as we define the models and provide more detail, we're going to attempt to provide parents clarity with how long they could expect to spend with their student per grade level, knowing that it greatly varies child to child, that all students are different and unique. But if we could give them a ballpark time frame on what they could expect to support each day and how long their student would be on the computer each day, we're working on those details right now because we think it's important to make decisions. Elementary in K-8, a challenge there is it's dependent on sufficient interest on the campus. All right, now we're going to talk about full online, and I'm just going to take a sip of water. Students participate in full-time online instruction. So many schools and districts around the valley are quickly trying to create online instruction. What's so exciting about SUSD is we have a tried and true program that has been here for 10 years. And it is well regarded and taught by our highly qualified SUSD teachers. It will offer social emotional support. There will be interactive activities and assignments. And as we build our K-5 online, which will be our new portion of it, we want to be very interactive and have a lot of time with teachers. We understand that that's important to our young students. We have, again, the certified SUS experienced teachers using our tried and true online curriculum. It's not something we're just putting together right now. There are discussion-based assessments in it, and there is test security in regards to assessment. You can expect blended, synchronous, and asynchronous learning, depending on grade level, class, and teacher. It's important to note that Scottsdale Online is an accredited online instruction program with 10 years experience, and that as such, students would be able to participate in their athletic programs in their home schools for high school because that it is a recognized program. We ask families to commit to 1 semester enrollment in Scottsdale Online. It is too disruptive to learning to jump back and forth. And also with staffing, we need to staff accordingly for at least a semester. You can imagine if everyone was moving back and forth, how problematic that would be. So we want families to understand and make the commitment for 1 semester enrollment in Scottsdale Online, that you would be having your SUSD certified teachers supervise your students, and that learning would be blended. Do you remember the number I shared with you about what 20% of students would be? Over 4,000? With the anticipated, very much anticipated increase of a number of online students, we are fortunate to have an existing principal that we can tap with foundational knowledge on our online platform to support an influx of students and staff and take this model from high school with a few middle school all the way to K-12. The benefits of Scottsdale Online are it's proven, it's recognized, it's accredited, students can still participate in sports. Families have flexibility. Unique electives are offered, and students can take a class where they're the only student because it's such a unique elective. They can work at their own pace many of the times, and they can move quickly through courses if they choose to do so. The challenges, again, are you're at home, and students so much want to get back to their home schools, but we understand that this is going to be an important choice for some families right now. The other benefit to this option, so many times I've received emails from families and they just want to know, what's it going to look like next month? What's it going to look like next week? When is this going to be over? Such passion in these emails and phone calls, and I get it. I'm a parent too. I want my child to go back to school. When you choose Scottsdale Online, you will know what you are choosing for a year if you want, or at least for a semester. So there is that consistency and continuity and peace of mind. And this is what we're doing as a family for the next semester. And in these uncertain times, families are really craving that. So that is one benefit. All right, this is a model that I did not offer as an option because this is the model for when schools don't open or schools close. So the three models that I just presented to you, full online, hybrid, and full return, are when we can reopen schools. We understand that the governor is saying that we cannot open schools right now until August 17th. Our start date is August 10th. I do not have a high level of confidence right now with the situation in Arizona, and I know this is a shared lack of confidence that we can even open schools on August 17th. So we have to understand that we have an ever-changing situation. So my recommendation, our recommendation to this board is that we start school on August 10th, our first day of school. We will not have to change our calendar, cancel vacations, schedule makeup days. And more important than all of that, we need to engage our students in whichever way possible right now. I want to take a minute and honor all the incredible work that went into fourth quarter, that our teaching and learning department, working hand in hand with Dr. Hagigat and Sakos and all the principals and teachers and classified staff, found a way to make that happen in 3 or 4 days was absolutely incredible. So we learned a lot from that. We heard a lot from teachers. We heard a lot from parents and from students through our student advisory board that what worked, what didn't work, and taking a huge organization and putting it all online in a week, of course you're going to learn a lot. So we also had the Hanover survey that asked about families' fourth quarter experiences. And we took all that knowledge and really processed it as subcommittees and as a leadership team. And we made some very specific decisions on this enhanced distance learning model. We suggest that we open school with any student choosing full return and hybrid would participate in enhanced distance learning. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. If you're choosing Scottsdale Online, you would start on August 10th with Scottsdale Online. Again, there's no reason not to. You would just begin your online learning. This enhanced distance learning is your homeschool teacher that you are already scheduled with to instruct and assess learning. It's again 100% remote, but we will have district-issued devices to provide continuity and support to students. So families won't be sharing one device. Your device might not have the ability to download something you need to download. So we have that consistency. It also helps with student security because our IT department can manage the devices to ensure to help with safety of students. The other thing we heard loud and clear from parents and teachers was it was so hard to figure out how to access all these resources. How do I get on Zoom? How do I get on Teams? What's a Google Drive? Does my child have an email? Are you going to email me? Are you going to email me through Synergy? So we absolutely did the best we could, and I can't express enough how much I want to honor that work. But that was tough, and it was especially tough for families with multiple kids, with secondary students that had a bunch of teachers. And then, of course, our teachers were so dedicated that the art teachers and the band teachers, they were hearing from everybody because everybody wanted to engage. So that brings us to our decision to look at an LMS, which is a learning management system. So if you've ever taken a college class, you might have seen something called Blackboard Learning, where it's a learning hub. We have a learning management system called Buzz because of our Scottsdale Online that houses our Florida virtual curriculum, which is a piece of it is the content of that online curriculum. So we can peel away the content of Florida virtual and have that available for teachers, but use Buzz as our management system. So parents you might not need to know the details of that, but what you would know is when I'm going to my 5th grade class at Laguna, I'm going to see this platform, this learning hub that would have a way to contact me, classroom discussions, assignments, assessments, a link to Google Drive, a link to Teams if we're going to use Teams, a link to Zoom if we're going to use Zoom. So I know where to go to find everything I need, and it's all clickable. So this is a heavy lift to do this in a month. We already have professional development starting next week because we have to get ready to do this, because we not only have to teach teachers to access, we have to teach our parents and students how to access this. We believe it will be much easier than trying to find all those other things before, but we want to provide support. The other great thing about this is whether learning takes place hybrid, brick and mortar, someone gets sick and has to stay home for 2 weeks, they still have this connection with their classroom teacher. I hope this never happens, but if we have to reopen and close a certain school, this provides that continuity and fluidity that we need in this new normal. So I'm excited about this, clearly. This will be included in our recommendation. So, of course, there's benefits and challenges with this. The benefit is students will get to know their classmates online. They will get to know their homeschool teacher online. We will start to engage students. We will really focus on building relationships and social emotional support as we gear up. The challenge is we are uncertain on the timeline, and we want our students to return to school for those that are able to do so. Next, I have to talk about a couple specialty programs that are so very important in all this decision making. Preschool and pre-K would start with enhanced distance learning available for parents. We've already got students registered for preschool and pre-K, and they're excited to start at their selected schools. So we would start to have that get to know you experience in enhanced distance learning. When we return, when schools reopen, we're not going to offer a hybrid or an online preschool or pre-K. It's just not best practice. And this is an optional tuition-based program. And so we'll do the enhanced distance learning, of course, leading up to it, but when we're ready to open, our preschool teachers cannot wait to serve our little ones again. Kids Club is a tuition-based before and after school program with community education. And of course, when we open back up, those programs will open back up too. Very important, special education. I could spend hours on special education. Special education is such a point of pride for our organization in Q4. Some of the testimonials from parents, some of the videos of the parapros interacting with their students online, really, it was very moving, the dedication to make it work at all costs. Special education students, of course, will have access to all the return to learn models. Panda Preschool, like Community Ed Preschool, will only offer the full return model when we open up, but we'll have the enhanced distance learning to start. Services will be provided to the greatest extent possible following the student's individual education plan. We're going to work very hard to return our special education students on campus full return as much as possible to meet all the requirements of their individual education plan. We believe that is best, and we want to make that happen. Our most involved students have smaller class sizes, and we can take precautions there. We understand that that's not for everyone, and some of our students have medical needs as well. So we will do everything we can to provide services at home. But if you are a student who sees an occupational therapist and receives physical therapy, that's not something that's optimal online. So we have to be honest and transparent about what we can and can't make work for each model. But I am confident under the leadership of our special education department with our school psychologists and team leads that we're going to make it work for each family. Gifted definitely needs more than one slide. Families of students that are in the different gifted models are going to receive specific information related to how your model would work. But for this presentation, I would like to share that gifted services would continue, supported by the gifted teacher with enrichment. They will find live streamed lessons, continue above grade level curriculum, supporting student needs, and have teachers receiving support by their district-led, the district gifted coach. So Ms. Karen Brown has developed the nuances for each model and how each model could work, how each gifted model could work in each return to learn model. So information will be coming on that, but it's complicated but very effective. English language learners, of course, will follow the return to learn model. They will still receive their 1 hour of targeted English instruction, offered either virtually or in person, and their integrated English instruction. They will be supported by the SUSD EL coaches who are just fantastic. All right, now, I told you we worked the whole month of June, and then we were wrapping it up, our return to learn plan, and the governor's executive order came out on the 29th, delaying in-person instruction until August 17th. We are allowed to begin the school year on our original start date, and the executive order expires when in-person classes begin. So our recommendation for reopening is that SUSD students return to learn on August 10th, which is our first day of school, our originally planned scheduled start date. The virtual learning would occur through both the enhanced distance learning model and Scottsdale Online, or a combination of both dependent on the model selection, and I have a slide to articulate that. When the governor permits schools to resume in person, we would transition into our full on-site and hybrid models. So the delayed start of in-person learning, which would begin August 10th, if you are a full return student, you would participate in the full enhanced distance learning. So again, that's your homeschool teacher teaching the class that you were scheduled to be in person. The elementary and K-8 hybrid would participate in full enhanced distance learning, remembering that elementary and K-8 hybrid is pending interest per campus. The middle and high school hybrid is the one that would have a little bit of both. Any Scottsdale Online classes are going to start August 10th, and you can just stick with them. But for those classes that they were going to go to their school in person would be enhanced distance learning with that teacher that they hopefully will get to meet soon in person when schools reopen. Full online stays full online. And here we have a graphic for families to compare and contrast the different models to understand how they would meet their needs. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to Victor for making probably 98 versions of this throughout the month of June and early July and even today. I am now going to sanitize my area, put my mask back on, and invite Dennis Railer up to the podium, and I'll be available for questions after.
Four minutes dwell time. Good evening, President Beckham, members of the board, and Dr. Menzel. I was actually going to attempt the mask just to see how clear I could be, knowing that teachers are going to have to do this. Fortunately, in all of our classrooms throughout SUSD, we have audio enhancements. And so the teachers will have that opportunity. So the Operations and Logistics Committee started their work on May 26th using the Teams platform, and we met twice a week, each week until the 25th of June. Right about that time was when things started to get worse as far as the numbers are concerned. So our recommendation is more in line with a less aggressive rate of illness. So I'd like to read for you at least some portion of the first page of our recommendation to give you a little bit of background of how we got to where we got. with the CDC schools decision tree and Arizona Department of Education's roadmap for reopening as the primary resources for our discussions, the subcommittee set out to come up with a plan. Social distancing stood in the way of a well-rounded social, emotional, academic day. Any way we looked at it, every time we looked at it, it was social distancing that became the problem. Bringing kids in, 14 in the classroom, 11 in the classroom, created challenges. The cafeteria challenges, the hallways challenges, everything created more and more challenges. So as we continue to dig deeper and understand that students need recess, number one, that was the number one topic early on, is the kids need to go out. How do you social distance during recess? How do they not touch the same ball? How do they not touch the same playground equipment? So as important as it was for us to understand that students need recess, it was equally important for us to understand that teachers need a chance to eat lunch, take a break, take a bathroom break. And so having that social distancing component, having kids in classrooms eating lunch, having kids always separated, proved to be very difficult in the conversations that we were having. Social distancing, 6 student isolation, eating in the classroom, each required additional supervision that is not readily available at any grade level. As we continued to drill down into these issues, we were reminded of 2 words that were used quite often in the roadmap for reopening, but less frequently in the CDC school decision tree. The ADE roadmap for reopening schools, the word feasible is used 14 times, preceded by words if, is, and as. Feasible defined is possible to easily or conveniently or likely probable. ADE roadmap for reopening schools, the word possible is used 32 times, preceded by words extent, not, when, if, and as. Definition of possible, able to be done within the power or capacity of someone or something. So when we were wrapping up, before the numbers started to spike, our membership of the subcommittee, and I can't thank them enough, they participated and they worked day and night. I would get text messages in the middle of the night. I would get documents, reference documents, all hours of the day. And they really took this to heart. We had some great parents, classified staff, principals. It was a wonderful committee to work with. They truly have the students of SUSD at their best interests. So the members of this subcommittee agree that nothing is impossible, but any plan that strictly enforces social distancing is a plan that will cause significant burden and stress to the students, teachers, campus staff, and not likely allow students and teachers to meet their academic goals. We believe that our students can return to our campuses safely and enjoy all that school has to offer with the following measures in place. And again, that was before everything went up. So we did just add to that recommendation or created a conclusion that these recommendations come as positive COVID-19 test results are reaching new heights. The members of the Operations and Logistics Subcommittee believe that these recommendations are viable only if the rising number of cases were to stabilize and start to experience a decline. While we understand the importance of students and teachers being back together in the classrooms is essential for academic success, we believe that consistency is key. The timing to return to the classroom must be right to prevent the yo-yo effect that may be caused by opening then closing classrooms or schools due to COVID-19 cases on the campuses. So I will roll through the slides. Hygiene is going to be significant. You've heard it from the very onset of this: washing hands, wearing masks, social distancing. We know human nature is not going to maintain that social distancing unless we go back to the old Catholic school days with the nuns and the rulers giving them a smack on the hand for not staying 6 feet apart. I don't think that's going to work. So social distancing for adults, as we understand, is actually more important than for students. Students and staff that are sick must stay home. Super important. And we have developed a form that we will be providing to parents to help them better understand the symptoms and what to look for, and basically a commitment to the community at large that we're going to do our part to try and recognize, and most certainly not send our child home or to school if they are showing symptoms. Our staff needs to take that same personal responsibility to stay home when they are sick, or when a family member is sick that they could be contaminated. So practicing social distancing, there are times that we should be able to do that. Most certainly the adults should be able to do that. And that's going to be something that's going to be a reoccurring theme that we're going to have to talk about to try and get people just to stay a little further apart from each other. For the kids, I don't think that's possible. None of us thought it was possible. Reinforcing good hygiene habits on the daily, multiple times a day. Washing your hands. The masks, we feel that the masks will actually help them keep their hands out of their face. So if they are sick or they do have are contagious, they will not be touching their face because the mask will be covering that face. We have surveyed all of our campuses, and we have looked for opportunities to create more hand wash stations throughout the schools. The trouble right now is procuring all of the hand wash stations that we need. So we've been working with all of our vendors, trying to get those extra hand wash stations. And I'm talking about actual hook it up to the wall kind of stuff, not just the portable. We've got portable purposes for the high schools. All of the portable equipment has a foot pump, so very difficult for the little ones to manage. But the portables for the high school level, we actually have a couple of them in district now that we use whenever the water goes out on the campus. And a big thing is allowing the time for hand washing before and after activities, whether it's at recess, whether it's before and after lunch, making sure that we're taking the time to do that. Enhanced cleaning. Cleaning is a difficult thing under normal circumstances. Having the staffing on 4 million square feet of buildings and getting that done is a challenge. The cleaning is going to have to be an all hands on deck effort. Everyone is going to have to participate in some way, shape, or form to help maybe keep their own personal space a little cleaner. One of the things that we talked about was that we'll have a clean desk policy. So all employees, when you leave for the day, your desk must be clean, clear of all paper, clear of everything, so that as the night custodians come in, they can breeze through there and do that work. If we're using the electrostatic sprayers, you can only imagine that spraying the paper is not going to do much good. But the desk, the touch points in the areas where they're not covered up is important. Signage will be everywhere. We're working with our print shop and a couple of outside vendors. Carrie Blaker, the admin over at Arcadia High School, found a vendor that is doing some school spirit type stuff. So the signage will have the Arcadia Titans on it, and hopefully promote some school spirit and understanding that this is important. So we'll have signage everywhere, whether it's masks, social distancing, wash your hands, arrows on the floor to provide direction. Even though we don't really believe that social distancing is going to be that end goal, we're going to still try and get it so that people understand that it is important. there's no use just allowing everybody just to congregate. I don't know that there'll be actual enforcement. I don't think we're going to have social distancing police out there, but it's going to be encouraged. Nutritional services, we've done a couple of setups in the cafeterias. K-8, we have the convertible convertible tables that when put face to face, they look like a picnic table, but they can convert into like a bench. So we're going to have all of those in the K-8s that have that type of bench pointed in the same direction, so that at the very least, the breathing zones are not face-to-face, so they can all go that direction. They're 8-foot benches, and originally at 6 foot of distance, we could only get 2 students per bench. If we reduce that distance just a little and get 3, then we can increase those numbers in the cafeteria. So our goal is to at least be able to get a grade level through the cafeteria at a time. It will extend that lunchtime period. Hopefully we're not starting lunch at 9:30 in the morning, because I think most people call that brunch. But we definitely want to make sure that we at least, don't totally dismiss the social distancing component. At the high school, middle school levels, those oftentimes have the round tables or the octagon-shaped tables, and the chairs are freestanding. So all the popular kids go to one table. There's 25 of them surrounding the table. Impossible to social distance. We're going to work with the site administration, with the cafeteria workers, and try to encourage that to not happen. The nice thing about most of our high schools, they have outdoor eating. They have other areas that we can create some extra space for them to eat. All of the cafeteria food will be prepackaged and ready to go. It won't be open and ready for, more buffet style like it has been in the past. Tables will be sanitized between lunches, between groups of students. That will be a tall order. We're working on some techniques that will expedite that process, but we will be looking for other staff members, like I said, all hands on deck to help out in some of those areas. Okay. Classroom setting. This one was probably the first piece of the puzzle that we looked at when it came to social distancing, and we set up a classroom at a different school at every grade level, and basically found that depending on the school, depending on the grade level, depending on the classroom, we could have as few as 11 in a classroom and as many as 15 in a classroom, with very few exceptions higher than that. So unless you're incorporating the hybrid model, it'll be very, very difficult to keep the kids on campus, all of the kids, unless you kind of work away from that social distancing component. So we're gonna go through an exercise over the next 2 weeks. We're gonna set up every classroom with no less than 3 feet of distance between every desk. And I know that we're going to come across classrooms that there's just too much stuff in the classroom, whether it's bookshelves, whether it's centers like in the kindergarten, first grade areas. And we're going to work directly with the principals and the teachers in those rooms to talk about maybe storing that equipment for near term, so that we can get those kids spread out the best we can. A lot of the schools, whether it's the kindergarten tables or some of the collaborative STEAM programs that have tables, that becomes a little bit more challenging, because you just can't get that social distancing and that breathing space when they're looking at each other from 2.5 feet away. So we're fortunate in that we have 3 semi-trailers full of desks and chairs from the Hopi, Pima, and Cherokee rebuilds, and they're not brand new. They're in, most of them in awful shape, but they worked 6 months ago, so they'll work now. And we'll work through the table situation and try and maximize that distancing the best we can in those areas where they currently have tables. Will that be the case in every single classroom? No. There's a good chance that there will be tables in classrooms, and we'll just have to figure out what the best way is to separate those kids. We will have cleaning supplies in every single teaching space. A spray bottle and trifold wipes as Lysol wipes or Clorox wipes become more available. We've already purchased some, but we've calculated that what we have won't last a week if everybody's using as frequently as we're going to use them just tonight. So we've come up with a cleaning product that will kill the germs, that is safe for all to use, and have come up with an idea to have the teachers spray the desks and the kids can wipe them off. Throw it in the trash and off they go. And that would be just for periodic use, not that the classroom sanitation is going to be their sole responsibility, because we will have our team and ABM working to do that as well. A big thing is sharing classroom supplies. We're going to discourage that as much as possible. Scissors, crayons, colored pencils, things like that. Every student, certainly at the elementary level, will need to have their own supplies. And I know that this community, for those that can't afford those supplies, I'm sure that the SUSD community will come together to make that happen. It happened with amazing results at Navajo when Navajo caught fire and we moved them in a day. And they had more stuff than they possibly needed. So this is a time for Scottsdale schools to really come together to make sure that happens. Transportation's a tough one. The bus is only so big. There's only so many seats, and we only have so many drivers and so many routes, and we got to get them on time to the schools. So Brendan Wagner, the Director of Transportation, has done some exhaustive efforts with his team, looking at bus routes, trying to maximize those efforts to minimize the number of kids on a bus. In some cases, at some schools, that will just not be possible. So the decision was to wear a mask. Everybody wears a mask to drive on the bus. The bus driver, for his or her own safety, will wear the mask while kids are loading and unloading, but not while driving. The kids will be removed at least one seat from the driver, so second seat back, and then try to space the kids out best we can. Try and sit family members together. Try to, work through those things. But if it's a full bus route and they can't get another bus driver, remember that many of our bus drivers are not exactly, well, I'm not going to say that, that would be rude. They are in that age bracket. A lot of them are retirees. A lot of them have their own concerns for their own safety. So they're between each route, they're going to sanitize the bus. The one point that everyone's going to touch all the way along the way is the top of the seat, the corner of that seat, as they make their way through the bus. So at least sanitizing that portion. And then at the end of their day, then they will sanitize the whole bus, the windows, the seats, everything. But in between, it's those touch points that they can get to the quickest. And that is all I have. And I think we'll be taking questions at the end. Here.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, good evening, President Beckham, Vice President Beckman, Governing Board, Dr. Menzel, and virtual guests. As our students transition back to school, whether it be in person or online, we want to ensure that we are considering the social emotional impact of the pandemic and recent current events. The last several months have triggered a variety of emotions and experiences, some of these positive and some of them especially difficult. Never before has it been more important that we take the necessary steps to implement social emotional learning supports and reestablish connections and foster resilience. In addition to considering the recommendations from the CDC and ADE, the Social Emotional Learning Subcommittee reviewed recommendations from organizations specific to social emotional learning and mental health. These organizations were the National Association of School Psychologists, the American School Counselor Association, the School Social Work Association, and all of those led into the critical actions recommended by CASEL, which is the leading organization for all things social emotional learning. As we initially begin to reopen schools, we must acknowledge that the pandemic has impacted the entire community. Our focus on learning needs to be on implementing the universal supports, which means those SEL strategies are embedded into our daily routines and practices. And that is one thing that all of these different organizations recommended, is recognizing that we're going to go through different phases of recovery. And right now, every single student, every single staff member, and every single community member has really been impacted in some way. And so it's important that we not necessarily consider those tier 2 type of interventions, those small group interventions, but instead go back to that universal support and what do we need to do to make sure that we are taking care of our entire community. So we are committed to providing exceptional social emotional learning supports to all students, staff, and families. We know that when our students and our staff return, we must acknowledge their experiences. So everyone has had a different experience the last several months. We have to validate feelings, reassure a sense of psychological and physical safety, and instill a sense of hope and moving forward, because really this is something that we're all in together. We know that in order to learn and for our teachers to be in a place where they can really teach our students, we have to address the social emotional needs first. So our students need an emotionally and supportive, safe environment. The SEL team has created a variety of recommendations to help our schools create connections and engagement activities. This could be anything from creating welcome back videos to allowing our students to participate through morning announcements virtually. We want our students to know that they are cared about and feel connected to their school community. Our teachers will receive professional development on implementing trauma-informed practices and SEL strategies into their daily routines. This training resources have already been developed by the Social Emotional Learning team. So this is something that we will be presenting to our administrators at Admin Academy. They will be taking this training and the resources back to their campuses to then train all of their teachers on the trauma-informed practices and the different SEL strategies. So we provided several different examples of activities, strategies based on the different levels. So elementary school, our connection activities might look very different from in a high school setting. And so, again, they'll be able to really look at those different ideas, those strategies, and determine what's going to work best on those campus. But that will all be provided for our administrators and for our staff. So we also know that some of our students are going to need more intense support. So the Social Emotional Learning team is recommending that we implement Social Emotional Learning teams on all of our campuses. And so that is something that a lot of our schools already have in place. Some of them call them Social Emotional Learning teams. Some of them call it a mental health team. Some of it schools might call it a tier 2. But those are teams that are really looking at what supports do we have on our campus. They're completing that resource mapping to identify what additional supports and interventions are needed. This team could be made up of a group of individual teachers that have a special interest in social emotional learning we would recommend that the administrator, a school nurse, school psychologist, counselors, and social workers also participate on this team. So this team will be able to provide additional supports to our teachers, and then also ensure that we have system-wide social emotional learning happening across campus. For staff, our back-to-school professional development will prioritize social emotional learning. Part of the training will focus on self-care and helping staff to deepen their understanding of their own needs. We will provide staff with a newsletter that has strategies to support the different areas of self-care. We will provide them with community resources and additional information on accessing the Employee Assistance Program. We have also developed great relationships with several community partners. So we've already started conversations with our community partners around supporting staff. This could be anything from offering opportunities to participate in trauma-informed yoga, to mindfulness, to professional development opportunities, offered virtually, presentations to support their own mental health needs. So the goal is to have these resources and supports readily available for our staff. In regards to our community, the recommendations of the social emotional learning team is to ensure that we provide opportunities for our families to connect and be a part of the school community. This could be anything from, again, participating in virtual listening groups, to having the opportunity to participate virtually on back-to-school nights. We will continue to build and expand our community partnerships so that we're able to offer meaningful referrals. So when we have families that are in need of additional supports, whether it be social emotional services through mental health providers, or perhaps a referral to a food bank, we are able to share those meaningful referrals to our families to make sure that those needs are also being met. We've also reached out and started conversations with some of our community partners around offering presentations to help support our families as they navigate the transition ahead, whether it be back to school learning or if they choose to online school. So we want to, again, make sure that we're creating that homeschool connection and providing our community with the different opportunities to receive support and information. So in summary, the overall recommendation of the social emotional learning team is to acknowledge that the entire community has been impacted by the pandemic. And as we transition back to school, to prioritize professional development around social emotional learning so that we are able to effectively meet the needs of the staff, student, and community and embed these practices and strategies into our daily activities. All right, so I will turn it over for questions.
So if you'd like to come back up, and I'll open it up for questions for our governing board. And if somebody would like to start us off, that'd be great. If not, I'm going to start on my right with Jan Michael Greenberg.
So, first of all, thank you everyone for the presentation work that's been poured into this, and especially all the people that were listed at the beginning of the presentation for all of their hard work, volunteering countless hours trying to accomplish this, because it is certainly a difficult task and an odd task that the school district should be required to, I guess, make these decisions, which I will come back to later on after other people have time to ask their questions. But with the Scottsdale online learning, we had discussed a little bit yesterday about a test trial period, which we determined probably wouldn't be possible just because of the staffing commitments necessary. Is there an ability for parents and students to, I guess, not do a test trial, but review some of the materials, a sample, if you will, to see what those course materials are like and what those courses are like, just because it seems to me that many parents and students have been looking and shopping around for other online options where they are able to see some of those samples, and I guess it might be difficult for them to gauge their interest in staying with Scottsdale Online, which is what we hope that they would do if they don't have that sample.
And we may already have some of that for our high school model, and we can ask Dr. Sakos regarding that. I'll definitely look into it. We would need to do some development on what's happening with elementary since that's new. I think that's a great version because we do want parents to make an informed decision. So I think I absolutely can look into that.
Thank you. And I don't have any more questions at this time.
Vice President Beckman?
Okay, so jumping off of that, just to, so how, and this may be a question for Dr. Sakos, how similar is the summer school program for high schoolers to what we're going to be offering for Scottsdale Online? Because I was on last night, both my girls are in summer school classes right now, and I did see Buzz on there, and I did see the Florida virtual stuff, and I found it very, after I got the hang of it, very user-friendly. So I'm just curious if that is similar to what we're going to be rolling out for Scottsdale Online for our high school students.
Absolutely, but I would like to defer to Dr. Sakos to provide some specificity to that.
Okay.
Sure. President Beckman, members of the board, the online platform that is utilized for summer school is the same platform and learning management system that that you would see for online for our students taking an e-learning class or Scottsdale Online full-time throughout the year. The vast difference is the pacing. So when you are a student registered in Scottsdale Online, the current structure is that you take 3 courses every 9 weeks. So it is somewhat of a block schedule, and then you start 3 new courses the second week. In our current e-learning model that Dr. Guerin talked about earlier, where you're taking an e-learning class but sitting in a lab at a high school, historically, those have been the 18-week classes so that you are on pace with the other brick and mortar courses that you are taking. So the only difference that you would experience is the pacing going through a semester within a 3-week period versus a semester in a 9-week period.
Or if you would like to take the questions in or statements, so I can be quick about mine and move on?
Just
or-
go ahead, we don't have any order.
We don't have an agenda for the questions
Nope, we don't.
necessarily, so, and there's a lot of content, so.
Oh,
I
are you
will-
going to ask a question to someone else, or, because otherwise I'll ask my question to Dr.
I don't know who they'd be posed to, so yeah, I can defer. The next one for you particularly would be, with regard to the in-person model, I've gotten tremendous amount of emails and messages, as I'm sure other board members and leadership has as well. One of the questions that people keep asking is, continually is what happens in person when we go back if someone tests positive? What is the protocol as far as does everyone in the class, quarantine for 14 days? What do we think at this moment in time we're going to process we're going to put in place? Go ahead.
So I was going to say, we've had a number of conversations, and the most recent conversation was one with State Superintendent Hoffman this afternoon. So the Department of Health Services is working on a protocol that can be used by all Arizona schools. They're working in partnership with the county health departments to establish that protocol. We've been told that, our nurses have been told that Maricopa County has been working on a protocol. What we don't know at the present time is when that will be available. I am waiting for an email to provide confirmation of when that's available. So optimally, because we are in the business of public education and not public health, we're expecting the health professionals to guide us on what the protocol is and the proper response. We will be developing our contingency plan should the health departments not provide us that guidance by the time we're required to return in person. And that will be informed by other health professionals. So we don't have the specific protocols at the present time because we've been told that it's going to be provided to us before we return in person. But we will be doing our contingency planning as well.
Okay, thank you for that. So one last thing, and then I'll let Board Member Kravitz go. We keep talking about the situation is fluid, and I get that. I guess that's a great word to use. I asked you when you presented this to the governing board members 2 by 2 the other day, that if we would, as we got closer to the potential start date, are we going to be revisiting where we are in the state and as these things change? Because speaking of Superintendent Hoffman, I read a letter that someone provided to me, and I'm not sure, I think it may have come out today, with regard to calling on the governor for stronger measures to get this virus under control. I'm not getting into that, but specifically talking about having and making recommendations and having conversations and recommending when the positivity rate in the state is under 5%. And right now our state's positivity rate is 25 to 30. So the only reason I bring that up is because a lot has changed and changed quickly. So I don't know where we will be as we get closer to August 10th, August 17th, et cetera. So I want our community to know that we are intending on having this conversation yet again. All of this work is wonderful, but things are changing rather quickly, and we could be in a better position, we could be in a worse position. We are going to look at all of this data again, correct?
Absolutely. And that is one of the reasons we wanted to develop 3 models. So I feel confident, and this is my opinion, that we will hear from the governor and have a delayed start date before August 10th that pushes us back even more. That is my sense. And I know it's a feeling that is shared by many. But what we're going to be asking parents this Friday, and I know it's difficult because the situation keeps changing, but we're not asking them what model they want to start on August 10th. We're saying when it is deemed safe to open schools, what model do you believe that you will select? Understanding that this could change, but we need to understand what a majority or what most people would do when schools can return, because our enhanced distance learning is contingent on trying to make as few changes as possible for students. If we don't know what their choice is going to be with reopening, then the potential of their student having to change teachers once we come back is very strong, and we're trying to avoid that. We want to provide consistency for students. So if you're going to choose Scottsdale Online and you already know that, great. If you know when schools open and they're deemed safe to open and you want to have full return, we can get you with enhanced distance learning with those teachers that will be your teachers on full return. So that's why we're asking families to make this decision, and it's a decision for when schools are safe, not for August 10th. And I think that would help to frame it that way for parents to feel comfortable, because it's very hard to ask people to make a decision when things are changing. But framing it that way could support it.
This is a big topic, so I have a lot of more questions, but I'm going to yield the floor to Board Member Kravitz so that we can all kind of.
Thank you.
Board Member Kravitz, can I ask a question? Are you going to do a follow-up? Because I have a follow-up to that, if I could interrupt, unless you're going to ask a follow-up.
Well, go ahead, because what I consider a follow-up may be different than what you consider a follow-up.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Okay, thank you, because I think it's really important. I want to make sure I heard what you just said, because I think it's different from what I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
So I thought parents were going to choose a model, and they would start that model on the 10th. But you just said that they, even though they choose a model, that it's going to remain fluid. Okay, so can you clarify what you just said?
Can I go back to my graphic, if we can hit present on the presentation? The magic technology people behind the screen. Look, they're finding the slide for me, and I'm probably pressing the button at the same time, which is not helpful. One more graphic. Keep going. Okay, I'm sorry, going the wrong way. Can I jump to that? It's the return graphic. I'm just gonna get there real quick. There we go. Okay. So on August 10th, we are not able to reopen schools. The governor has delayed it till August 17th. So when we return, if a family chose full return on site, they would start with enhanced distance learning. but they did in fact choose full return on site now, but they would have to start with the enhanced distance learning. If they choose hybrid, they're going to also start online on August 10th. So really, the 3 models are not available on the start date, August 10th. The 3 models are available when schools are deemed safe to open. So right now, today, if school is going to open tomorrow, there would be a lot of parents that would really struggle with selecting full return. But understanding that we're going to start in this online environment until it's deemed schools are safe to open by the governor, then we would transition into the model of your choice. So I'm just trying to illustrate you're not choosing something for today, you're choosing something that you're going to move into when it is safe for schools to reopen.
Okay.
So I hope I didn't confuse the.
But it is dependent upon what you choose, because, and then you stay with that model. Whatever you choose on the date that's given, whether it be hybrid or full return, because SOL I'm putting aside because you can start that, you're staying with it, it's full semester. On the 10th, you will be getting a either hybrid teacher or you'll be getting a full return teacher.
Yes, that is correct.
So I got the impression what you had said before is that you could change your mind between hybrid and full-time at the start date of when we returned in person.
That's not what I meant.
That is not, okay.
I meant you're not selecting the model for our current reality today. You're selecting it for a safer future.
But you are, because you're still going to start on the 10th, and you're going to either have a hybrid teacher or you're going to have a full return, even though it's the enhanced distant learning. And let's say we don't start until, I'll just pick a date, the 23rd. You will be staying with that hybrid model because you've already started with it. You can't change your mind, correct? Given whatever the fluid circumstances
so we're
are,
gonna
you will stay with hybrid.
We're always going to work with individual families, but it would be dependent on space and availability in the other models, of course. But we're going to try to work with families. But I was just trying to articulate that we're starting August 10th all online. So that's
because you can't change out of if you pick, because all of a sudden you could have everybody leave hybrid, and then what are you going to do? Because you've set up school with those hybrid teachers and those hybrid students.
We could deal with unique extenuating situations.
But not a big influx of going either way. All right, thank you, and I apologize. Thank you, Board Member Kravitz. You have the floor.
No problem. I just wanted, hold on, let me back up. Can you provide more specificity on the enhanced distance learning model with emphasis on enhanced and learning? Is that a platform based on teachers' lesson plans or teachers using the SOL curriculum to enhance what would be going on in the classroom?
That's a great question.
Because there were some concerns that, you know, during our last semester, that, you know, how was the learning occurring? So, okay.
Sure. So enhanced distance learning is the brick and mortar, the classroom, the site, the homeschool teacher teaching in a virtual environment, waiting for schools to reopen. And so that teacher has tried and true, unique to them curriculum lessons, but of course are aligned with SUSD curriculum maps, Arizona State standards, all of that. That we're going to bring that all to this learning hub, which is BUZZ, the learning management system. But because we're using this learning management system and we are going to have a K-12 license, our teachers would have access to Florida virtual lessons. So in the enhanced learning model, you're not going to be a Scottsdale Online student going through the Florida virtual lessons. You are with, again, Mrs. Guerin's Laguna 5th grade class with what I've taught. But it's challenging to teach online. I need additional resources. I'm teaching integers, and there is a fantastic video and lesson and engaging online activity that I can pull out of Florida Virtual from 5th grade curriculum and pop it into my lesson. So it's opening up additional online resources for teachers. So we will certainly expose and train them to all that has to offer. But it is not like being a Scottsdale Online student. It is still that teacher. It's just an ease of access for teachers and for students to interact in a virtual environment to try to improve. The other piece of enhanced, we heard really loud and clear, and I might have not gotten into this in enough detail, is consistency. So we're going to work with our leaders, our principals, and our teachers. We tried to be as absolutely flexible as possible fourth quarter, and we want to still have flexibility, but we're going to have grading. In high school, these are credit-bearing courses. We're not sure how long the virtual environment will go on. So we have to set expectations and standards so that just like when you're in a middle school class at one middle school and, you know, from Cocoa Paw to any of our middle schools and you're comparing it to a different middle school as well, Mojave, that there is those standards and consistencies from class to class throughout our district. We're a unified district. So we need to bring that consistency to the enhanced distance learning model while still honoring the uniqueness and creativity of every teacher and also being responsive to families that are struggling, you know, with situations. So we, of course, will always be responsive, but we have to be moving, providing that rigor, providing that relevance, providing that consistency. Families want that. And there was a lot of variety from classroom to classroom because this was a new thing that we were doing.
Right. Thank you.
Yes. Vice President Beckman.
I have a follow-up to that. So I'm going to try most of your patience tonight because I have a lot of questions. So with regard to grading and equity, there's a concern I have with regard to equity in our district. You know, I know we're going one-to-one, and we have the wonderful resources to provide that for technology for our students. Wi-Fi continues to be an issue. The working parents every day continues to be an issue because it's reality for many of them. How are we going to provide rigor in our classroom, grade appropriately, but give the latitude to some of our families that is needed with regard to due dates and when they can get online, if they can get online, 3 kids at home that can't all be online at once, because that's a very real environment. As I've heard from some of our community members, when you have working parents until 6 o'clock at night and they come home and make dinner, the last thing they can do is get online and start the school day with their kids. And if things are due the next day or the day after, this is an impossible environment. And some of these things that are coming up tonight are going to be fluid, as you said, because we're going to be talking about in the classroom later. But this is something that we are saying we're doing August 10th. So I would hope that we are coming up with some solutions now and having this conversation, because I know it's a big concern for some of our parents. So wondering if you can speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to honor the work that happens in our Title I schools and honor the work of Margaret Cerna and the unique way that they have managed to provide resources to families, all families during this pandemic this summer. It's truly a point of pride. We were so busy in our teaching and learning subcommittee, and several of the members just volunteered to go to all the food distribution sites with 48 hours notice to figure out how to have people fill it out so that our underrepresented virtual parents could have a voice and be heard in this reopening plan. So teachers, educators are special. They find a way to get it done. So I always, when I wake up in the middle of the night and worry about things like that, and it's happening a lot this summer, right? I'm not used to being home and figuring this all out during a pandemic, but I have such confidence in our leaders, in our principals, in our teachers. And so I think it's going to be really important that we are very thoughtful and plan ahead. So we're going to work, Teaching and Learning and Educational Services will work with Dr. Sakos and Hagigat to work with principals to define those bumpers or that framework, that we're going to have some flexibility. Clearly, attendance policies of the past and sending out the letter that you can't be absent is a thing of the past. If you don't feel good, we want you to stay home, right, please. So a lot of what was our normal and was very systemic throughout a K-12 public school district does have to change, and we have to question it. And an example of a 10 or 15% reduction from one day on a late assignment, you know, in my heart, that is not necessarily something that we need to do in this situation while we're doing enhanced distance learning. We absolutely have to hold students accountable so that they complete the work, but we also have to balance that with the support we provide them by checking out those mobile hotspots, by having the counselors and the principals, teachers individually call and check on families and students, which was very, very common. And look at where students are. Principals were pulling up and counselors and teachers were pulling up what students were engaging, who was not engaging, and calling and saying, you haven't gone online in 3 days, what's going on and how can we support? So that level of care and individual contact is something that we're going to have to work through. It's not optimal. And I think we have to be honest and know that we cannot have that face-to-face connection in our virtual environment. And we want to make it so, but we can rise to the occasion and get really creative. And one thing I know about the SUSD family is I'm confident we can get it done.
I really appreciate you taking the time to expand on that. So in summary, we're going to hopefully speak to the principals, people at the site level, ask them to give a little latitude, communicate with their families to see where it's needed, I would hope.
And teachers actually really want that guidance.
Oh, they do. I know. They do a tremendous job.
It is so hard to figure it out
Right.
on your own. I mean, as a teacher, I wanted that. I mean, I certainly wanted flexibility and to be creative and all that, but this is an unusual situation. And if we frame expectations by, you know, program and grade level and school and have that commonalities that we need in a unified school district, it will serve all of us well. And we need to be transparent and provide those expectations to parents in advance so that as a parent you wouldn't be surprised by a late assignment grade. You would know how the teacher would handle it. Not that that wouldn't eventually happen, it's just that we would be clear on the flexibility of it, potentially.
Could I have a follow-up question to that? What will be the grading policy then for each of the models?
I cannot speak to it with specificity right now. We are, July is the development. Now that we've brought the models to you, and once we agree on the models, now we start to work out the details. And I can tell you that there are 150 questions such as that. The grading policy right now is that we will need to provide grades for students. We need to assess their learning. More importantly, we need to understand and have gap analysis assessments to understand what is missing from fourth quarter. Less about the grade, more about driving instruction so we can be effective teachers and really fill in those gaps from students' learning. These kids have been at home for months and months. They've been at home since March. And yes, we had fourth quarter learning online, but we're working very hard with CIMAR, with our assessment department, and with teaching, learning, and the coaches right now to use our school city assessments to find a way to assess students to determine how to drive teaching and learning so that we can be responsive to those standards that maybe they didn't master in the fourth quarter and where they need to start from here. So not only will grading be important to inform all of us, and because grades are required and we have college-going students and all of that, but more importantly, it's going to help us make decisions and really understand where kids are at.
Board Member Kravitz?
Sorry, comment and a question. I just wanted to thank everyone that participated in one of the three committees. I wanted to thank the cabinet as well as all the people that participated in the various question and answer meetings that the superintendent had virtually. I believe they were all yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. And I wanted to thank all the staff that completed the human resources survey, and also thank our community for all the emails that they sent us. My question is, and I'm not sure if it's for you or for someone in IT, have the Chromebooks been delivered? And if not, when, the additional ones that we've purchased, and if not, when do we expect delivery of those?
Let me call and ask Debbie Spalding to jump in, if that's okay.
Good evening. I'm here.
Good evening.
Thank you for inviting me to speak. The majority of the Chromebooks have arrived, but all of the devices are on schedule to be here and ready before school starts.
So is that August 9th, or is that, or is that the end of July, or, middle of July? I'm just.
Okay, so I'm going to say that a different way. Before teachers return for their first day on the 28th, we plan to have everything ready.
Great, thank you.
And to confirm, students kept the Chromebooks they had from last year, so the distribution is for those that didn't have individual devices, those would be delivered separately, correct?
Yes.
And we're planning logistically on a drive-through device type pickup. We're getting really good at the drive-through.
Board Member Pearlberg. Thank you, and I'll jump right into that question just for clarity as well. So for those families who choose the on-campus choice and the enhanced distance learning, will they be receiving the one-on-one
That's all models.
devices as well? That's all models,
Yeah.
not just SOL.
Because even if you're returning to school, we want you to have your own pencil, your own scissors, and certainly your own computer. I mean, have you looked at a teenager's computer lately, or their phone?
I would touch my daught's with a 10-foot pole, so
So-
yes, I understand that. Okay, so thank you, and I also want to extend my gratitude and thanks for everyone who has been working so hard, really since March, to try and figure out how to keep our students learning through all this nightmare. So very grateful for all of that. As far as these options, I can't really express how happy I am to see how much we've listened to the various voices, strong on both sides. We know those who know what they want it very badly, and I just feel that your team has listened to all of that and provided options. None are perfect. None are going to be perfect. We all recognize that, hopefully, but at least it respects every individual learners and their families' needs. And I couldn't be more proud that SUSD is able to do that. I would also encourage our community and even our board and everyone right now to process through these and just accept the reality of these aren't going to be perfect, and we don't have all the answers now. We could sit here all night and question each one, but until we're in the plane flying it, I mean, the reality is there's just going to be some things we won't know until it's happening.
We use the plane analogy a lot in our committee.
Heard it for a long
saying
time.
that it would,
Yeah.
Change destinations, all
Exactly.
that. But I really want to honor the three teaching and learning subcommittee chairs, because we actually peeled into subcommittees for each model. So Cheryl Redner chaired one committee, Cindy Bachna chaired one, and Debbie Spalding chaired another. And I have to say that they worked 7 days a week the month of June. That was just the reality of the situation. So I just really want to honor and appreciate your kind words, because there was so much thought and care that went into this.
It is amazing, and I see it. It not only listened to what we're hoping for the future, but it listened to what was happening in the past, and honest reflection. I think that shows as well. So yeah, I'm not going to ask a bunch of questions on each one. My only kind of glaring concern is that hybrid elementary K-8. And I respect trying to give choices. I'm concerned that our families will choose it, kind of envisioning one thing. I'm also very concerned that our staff, once they're in that plane and it's flying in the air, realize this isn't best practice. It may not be best for our students. And our families won't obviously know that when they first make that choice. I'm wondering if there's been any consideration given to possibly only promising that, or and let me clarify that right now. I almost did it to myself, is we're not promising this, especially at the elementary level. It's not promised. We can try, and if the numbers are there, and if the teachers are there, and if it can work. But have you thought about maybe even telling our families that it is very contingent on realities, and maybe even at the end of the first semester, it may not be offered if our staff just really feels it's not working best for our students?
I feel like I couldn't make that decision that far out in the future, but I would want to honor a family's choice for at least a semester.
Right.
And actually, I feel confident that full return or hybrid, we need to run for a full year because it is so hard to change midstream.
Right.
But understanding that things could change.
That's
So
cool, yeah.
I would never say never, but it would be with a ton of caution on changing I believe we would change the models to enhance it. And if it wasn't working, we'd find out why and make the necessary changes. They are complicated. We did not give up on them. It was very painful because as our subcommittee got attached to certain hybrid models that we just didn't have the resources to run. So, and that's the reality of every school district that is facing it.
I agree. I think as long as our elementary and K-8 parents really realize just how contingent it is on availability and success, I hope they'll be very thoughtful choosing it and not just kind of like, oh, it kind of sounds good and check it. And then a lot of work for our staff that is incredibly difficult has to go into that somewhat just kind of off the cuff decision. So I guess that's my concern.
It's also
there.
innovative and exciting. I mean, I could see myself volunteering for it because I think flipped classrooms are awesome. And there's always those risk takers out there that want to try something new and innovative. I mean, Dr. Menzel has shared that this will push us to become innovative in our new environment, and we're not going to lose those new skills that we learn as educators.
And I do, even though I see the challenges the most right there, I appreciate the door being there to go through. And again, yes, the choices we've offered our families, I don't know how you could, we've tried to, you never please everyone, but we've tried here as best we can, and just incredibly impressive, and appreciate that. Let's talk substitutes. Is there an increase in the substitutes that we're hiring, or what is the expectation there as far as those needs?
So that question has come up many times, including in our Q&As. We are talking about the potential of increasing our permanent sub pool. We also recognize that we hire substitutes on an as-needed basis, with the exception of those permanent sub pools. So we're looking into the possibility of expanding that to account for potential increased number of absences. But it's something that everyone in the Valley is addressing, and the substitute pool is going to be tapped regardless. By everyone once we return to in-person instruction. We actually are planning for substitutes to cover for online instruction as well, because if you get a teacher who's incapable of teaching because they themselves are sick and can't do it, you have to be able to fill in for that environment as well. So the Human Resource Department is working on those contingencies, both in terms of expanding the permanent pool as well as making sure that we're prepared as best we can be for an increased call on subs once we return in person.
We have increased the number of permanent subs that the district normally hires?
That's the plan. I don't know that we've hired them yet, but that's the plan to expand.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. And thank you again to everyone.
Vice President Beckman. Okay. I haven't done it. I'm going to do it again, just like everyone else here. I want to take a moment to thank the leadership team, the committees, and all the individuals for their tremendous efforts in putting together the information for tonight. I have to say, I don't think any of us welcome the decisions we have to make. We exist, as Dr. Menzel said, for the sole purpose of educating children, and somehow we find ourselves responsible for making decisions regarding public health. And because we're not experts, and there's a wide range of passionate opinions in our community, and yes, I've read every single message and every email that has been sent to me, even today, we're at the mercy of executive orders and funding decisions that leave us with a lot of questions. So I thank you for stepping up to plan during this challenging time, and I thank our parents and our community for having patience and understanding. And finally, I thank our teachers and our staff for trusting us to do our best and provide an educational environment that is as healthy and safe as possible. With having said that, I asked you the other day, and I want to speak to, I am a little bit concerned about the mental health of our educators right now. Some of them are very concerned for coming back to school when we make that decision, when we feel it's healthy. So what are we prepared from, I've suggested to Dr. Menzel, I would like to see that we have some resources maybe provided for them, some people to talk to about anxiety, et cetera. Can you touch base on what the options are? I mean, and maybe you don't have all the answers tonight, but for those teachers that are higher risk teachers that are faced with that decision that's not a pleasant one of, I don't feel comfortable going back into my classroom, but I love my job. What do I do?
So really, that is a Dr. Bowman human resource question with the support of Shannon Cron. So I tried very hard to stay out of trouble and not answer human resource questions, even though I think I could answer that one, but I would definitely want to defer to Dr. Bowman's expertise.
Well, I agree, but I would like to invite Shannon. I don't know if this microphone by Gladys works, but if it does, I'd grab that one so that we don't have to worry about the sanitizing there. To talk about some of the, because the slides for the social emotional learning support were shortened, and there's been quite a bit of work that's been done to address this question. And then the secondary question on human resources, we actually are going to prioritize for those staff members who have health conditions that would require them not to come back in person because they're at risk. Those will be the first people that are offered the online teaching opportunities. The second wave of considering online support are those individuals, the teachers who have family members that might be in a high-risk category. Beyond that, we need to actually spend time thinking about what the assignment protocol will be, and we want to commit to including teacher voice in that conversation in terms of identifying the process for both assignment and transfer, because there's concern. If I choose the online now, will I be able to go back in person a year from now? Lots of questions and concerns, and that does produce anxiety. And so we need to flesh out the rest of that, but we can confidently say that the first two priorities are people who themselves are in an at-risk category or who have family members who are, because we want to be sure to prioritize the health, safety, and well-being of those teachers. And the rest, as we look at what the demand is, what the preferences are, we'll work with teacher voice at the table to identify what the protocol will be for assignments.
Thank you.
So that absolutely is a concern. When we surveyed staff regarding what their needs were, the number one concern from our certified staff came back as physical health. And so through conversation in the committee, what we learned was it wasn't, in regards to keeping themselves physically active during quarantine. It was in regards to coming back to campus and being concerned about exposure, bringing possible exposure back home, or students. And so that is something that we've had a lot of conversation around. That is something where, our committee felt that it was extremely important that we start that professional development with acknowledging, staff concerns and focusing on self-care, having a better understanding of what their needs are, and then making sure that we're giving them different strategies to address that anxiety. We've created a wonderful multi-page newsletter that gives staff, ideas and supports to address those type of issues around, physical safety, mental health issues, having to do with anxiety. And then providing them with a list of different resources, community resources that are free and available. We've also shared with them, information on how to access the Employee Assistance Program if they feel that, that anxiety or that need is so great that they are interested in seeking, outside counseling. But that is definitely a concern, and it's something where, again, when we talk about those evolving needs, I think once our staff has answers around what are the safety precautions that we're going to put in place, that will alleviate some of the concerns for some people, but it's still going to be there. And it's something that, again, we're going to need to address, and we need to provide supports, and we need to make sure that we're utilizing, our mental health experts on our campus, in addition to, our nurse, who is also oftentimes a mental health expert on our campus, to make sure that we are able to provide our staff with the supports that they need, and then also information on those community resources.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I have a follow-up, Shannon, to what is going to be different this coming up August from what we have for SEL learning? And I've heard one, which is additional professional development. And so if you could expand on that, is that I think, is it Noodles that we do? Is it that type that they can access any point in time, or will teachers be given additional time off of school to prep for this additional PD? It sounds like we're having a lot more PD than we've had in the past. So I guess it's a two-tiered question. How are the teachers going to have the time in the day to actually access all this TV? And if you could also address what's changing.
Absolutely. So one of the recommendations from the Social Emotional Learning Committee was to prioritize professional development around meeting the social and emotional needs of our students. And so we met with the different administrators, site-level administrators, elementary, middle school, and high school, and asked them to dedicate one full day of back-to-school professional development to just solely focus on social emotional needs. And so that is where, the first part of that day will be spent addressing their own social emotional needs, looking at that self-care, making sure that they have resources, and then leading into having a better understanding of those trauma-informed practices. So what is trauma? How does that impact the brain, impact learning behavior? And then giving them specific strategies, and then giving them the opportunity, if this, presents itself where we are able to do these trainings live, to participate in some of those trainings as well. So there will be a lot more, intense training around, those trauma-informed practices, what that actually looks like, and then how to engage students. In terms of, what is going to be different, we know that the learning models are going to be different. And so something else that we're really going to have to focus on is how do we implement these different strategies for our online learners? How do we reconnect them, make sure that they still feel part of the community? So really kind of tweaking some of the things that we've done in person, but to make sure that, people are not losing that sense of community. So perhaps, again, going back to the opportunity for our students to Zoom in and, participate in morning announcements so they feel that they're a part of that community. So we'll be looking at all different, ideas, activities to really make sure that we're meeting the needs of our online learners, our in-person learners. And then, I would expect that we're going to see, a lot more behaviors, escalate. And again, we're going to go through different phases of recovery. So, as, time goes on, helping our staff really have a better understanding of kind of what is the function of that behavior, what purpose does it serve, providing them ongoing professional development. I think one of the positives that has come out of the past few months is that we have been able to really kind of, be creative in the ways that we have, met and, offer different professional development. So again, one of the things that the subcommittee has talked a lot about is to, keep an ongoing, pulse on, what are those evolving needs of our staff. And so, for example, if we are seeing, a rise in some of those externalizing behaviors in our classroom, maybe staff wants professional development on, de-escalation therapy strategies. And so we can put together a very, 20-minute PD where people don't have to go to a central location, but they can log in, and listen to this professional development virtually. It can be recorded. And so I think we'll be able to offer, staff a lot more opportunities as those, needs change. And that'll be something that's very different from what we have done in the past.
And if I could talk a little bit more about professional development, that'd be great for all topics. So we have those extra 2 days that last year were at the end of the calendar. Next year, they're at the beginning of the calendar. So teachers actually return for 5 full days. So those extra 2 days are critical and very timely. But we are also looking, next week we're starting training with Buzz, and I'm so glad to hear that you found, that's what I'm hearing, that there's ease of use, and I'm attending the training next week myself. But I'm a big believer in getting some innovators in to try it out, the pilot model that Jan Michael brought up, Mr. Greenberg. And so if we have teachers that are willing to have the training for Florida, the learning management system of Buzz, before those 5 return days. And I talked to Dr. Bowman, and this was just from a meeting today, so I haven't even had a chance to speak with him, but if we can look at professional growth hours for a certain number of teachers that are willing to be trained now and start to put their content in the system and start to tell us what their needs are and what the problems are, we're going to be so much better prepared to train all teachers, which we have scheduled for that first week back where they are on contract. We're also going to have to provide student and parent training as well, though we think it's going to be greatly improved from what they experienced last quarter in regards to ease of use. So we're going to allocate additional resources in the summer to try to jumpstart some of that training. So if I'm on a campus and 5 of the teachers actually did the summer training, and then we're trying to manage it that first week, or that they're all returning, I can lean on them, go to them for guidance and provide support. That was so important to me as a classroom teacher, to have someone that was in the trenches with me that knew about the system and could coach me a little bit. So we're setting that up right now as fast and furiously as we can under the leadership of Dr. Fountain.
Jan Michael?
I said I would briefly circle back to my comments earlier, and I think Board Vice President and a number of my colleagues have already brought it up, including our superintendent. I really thought about if I wanted to say something about the reopening generally, because for the most part, our leaders have passed the buck to us to make decisions that really are not within our realm of expertise and are not decisions that we should really be making, precisely because there is a risk to our students and the families that they return home to our teachers and our staff members who work tirelessly to educate them. And I'm fully aware of the very real economic issues, specifically with parents who work multiple jobs, who can't watch their kids and don't have an option. In fact, on my birthday last week, the Washington Post published an article that said, quote, "Our major obstacle to reopening is childcare." There was no mention about the teachers or the staff, the administrators, no mention about the virus, really, which is, I think, our actual obstacle. It is a health crisis, and our leaders have been very effective in bundling it as an economic crisis that is easily fixable, but I don't think it is, because we've heard for decades now the real inequalities in America. The fact that the Federal Reserve just published a report on home well-being for 2019 before the virus, where 30% of Americans unable to pay their bills already. So this has only made it worse, and putting it on us to make this decision has given me a lot of anxiety and stress, because these are things that all 5 of us worry about. We care deeply. From our work together, I can tell we care deeply about our teachers and our students and our staff, and it's very unfortunate. And I really wish that our leadership from the federal level all the way down to the state level would work better together and provide a more coherent, clear path, because this is something that we can deal with. But with this disparate plan of each school district opening or closing, and with states choosing when to open bars and close them, we've seen what's happened. We've seen states do really well, and we've seen our state, like many others, do very poorly, and it's just not the way you deal with these issues. So I am really sorry that our hands are tied here to a lot of our staff who are concerned, and Dennis Raylor even mentioned our bus drivers, critical infrastructure to get students to our classrooms so that they can be educated. I mean, this is a very real issue, and I'm hopeful that maybe in the coming months, our leaders will see that and come up with a more coherent plan for all of us that allow our families to not worry about the economic anxieties we have, to be able to stay at home and shelter in place and spend time with their kids, knowing that once this is truly dealt with, we will reopen for business, and it'll be just a fantastic system to come back to. But these are very tough decisions we've had to make in this board, and like everyone else, I'm just so grateful for all the considerations that everyone's put in place despite the realities that we cannot necessarily social distance, despite the realities that people are having to choose between coming to work or quitting their job during a financial crisis. It's a little cruel and unusual, but I appreciate how tough everyone's been, and if as things develop, maybe new things will come out and we'll be able to afford even better accommodations to people who are at risk, use new technology, and I'm cautiously optimistic for that. But I just wanted to say I shared those sentiments, and it's very concerning, very concerning. But thank you very much for all the hard work.
Do you have a question to that or not?
No, it's
comment?
just a comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I do have a few more questions because we are tasked with figuring this out. And I agree, we take it all very seriously, and I don't want anybody to think that we're not being very thorough in the questions that we're asking, because we do ask questions outside of this meeting as well. In thinking about it, one of the things that does come up, and it's one of your priorities, which is the stewardship of support and funding. Is there any additional cost with any of the three plans that we will either in the future need to approve, or that we just know we're going to be coming about?
Absolutely. So particularly with Dennis's organization and having to buy all those supplies, we've had to reallocate for the devices, and there is a significant cost with Buzz and Florida Virtual, but with our technology budget, we've been able to shift some funds, so we're not taking, we're reallocating, not increasing. So we are very lucky in regards to having the ability to do that. But we are also being very aggressive in seeking the Arizona CARES money, the FEMA money, and it was really a great time to have a grant writer in our district. It really was, because she has been working night and day, hand in hand with Shannon Crozier, to make sure that we access every dollar that we can through the CARES, through the FEMA grant, and that is going to cover a lot, but not even remotely cover our technology costs. We handed out so many devices, hotspots, we're not sure how they'll come back. So I think, in my opinion, and technology, cleaning supplies, materials, all of that is significantly additional costs that we don't typically face.
And does that include, because I know on our consent agenda we have an approval for applying for a grant, and that is for social emotional learning, is it? It's not? Okay.
And some of these grants have such short time frames, so when you have someone that can react so quickly, we've been very successful with that.
Because I do know that Shannon Cron's department is, obviously, you are making some changes, you're beefing it up, you're going to be having more professional development, which means you're going to be doing possibly more of these Moodles, as well as, I don't know if you're taking on additional people. Has that been looked at all?
Taking on additional staff. We're trying to manage this with the staff
that you have.
Okay. We are requesting a transfer of an administrator to handle the 20% of students to go online. That's a switch, not an increase. But it is a significant cost in just all of these things, and that's why we're applying for the CARES money to help. I don't know that it will touch all the technology costs that we've lost.
But at this point in time, you're not seeing us, given the financial situation we're in, needing additional funds at this point in time, and recognizing
well, that's really
it's fluid.
It's a Shannon Crozier question. So, but from my understanding, that.
The next question I have is, I'll need my glasses for my questions. I know the district's committed to its teachers and its employees, but what will be, I think you did touch on this, right? The criteria for choosing the students online. Okay. And what happens if we do have a lot of teachers that want to be on the SOL model, but we don't have enough slots for them? That's one of the questions.
Do you want me to answer that? Okay, and then Dr. Bowman can absolutely correct me, because again, I'm not HR, but Michelle Marshall and Dr. Bowman have been working through the policies related to COVID related to human resources, and we would first prioritize employees with medical conditions that have doctor certification and all of that. And then the next level of employees would be family concerns, family health issues. And then it would be interest and request and need for open positions. So we would attempt to make as many, satisfy as many needs as possible.
And I guess the real concern is what happens if we have additional teachers that want to be on that model, but we don't have space for them? They're wondering, because as they are choosing the model too, they don't have an answer, and they're wondering.
Right, well, at some point, if there's misalignment that way, there may be assignments of some teachers where you don't get your first preference. And ultimately, we want to work with our teaching staff to talk about what the criteria is for finalizing those assignments. But like in our current environment, depending on students that are enrolled in a particular class or grade level, sometimes we have to make shifts, and it may not be what someone preferred, but it might be what's available. And so in this environment where we don't get to control all of the variables, we want to work collaboratively with people to make those assignments, but recognizing in some instances, while people might prefer, if they don't have one of those medical conditions, we might not be able to honor the request. We'll do the best we can, but it's going to be driven in part by what our parents are choosing for their children in this environment.
And I think from what I've heard too is that what they want is what you just said, this collaborative, that they don't find out from a letter, that their supervisor is talking to them in person about that decision. Okay. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Let's see, my next question. Oh, you had mentioned under the SOL model that even one student in high school could take the class. How do we do that when we don't, when we do have limited teachers? I don't understand, how is a teacher going to be chosen to the classes that they are going to teach? Because if they have a class with one student, does that mean that they have to have, another class that has 50 students in it because they're making up for it? Or how is that, how are you explaining that to the teachers before they make that decision?
So it is so interesting because and this is going to change a little bit because of just the sheer numbers of students. So I believe our online model will become a bit more traditional because that's what families and students would expect, and also for K-5. So there is absolute flexibility. So I could pick this elective, and as a Scottsdale online teacher, I can be teaching multiple courses with a variety of different student numbers in them and manage that. And so Dr. Sakos could speak to how we staff that, but class size is less of an issue online because if it's asynchronous and you are interacting with that content and I'm coming in and supervising and supporting, it isn't, the face-to-face classroom time, right? A lot of it is asynchronous. So I can have students learning in different courses, in multiple courses that I am supporting. As a teacher, what I have to do is I have to have enough students overall, not in a particular course, that I'm managing. That's my understanding, and please, Dr. Sakos, correct me if I'm wrong. What also makes this model really work is if I'm a third grade teacher, I'm not just going to have students from my home school. What if only 3 students from my grade level home school choose online? Well, then I'm going to be picking up other third graders from other schools. We'll come together as a class community of online learners of third grade SUSD students with a third grade SUSD teacher. So we can optimize staffing in that way as well.
Dr. Sakos, I believe, has joined us.
Yes, I'm here. So,
do you have a comment?
Well, just to elaborate on what Dr. Guerin said, so we currently have just under 10.0 FTE teachers that teach e-learning in general. So whether a student is taking that in a lab at the campus, historically taken a lab at the campus, or full-time online, we have our full-time teachers. Each one of our full-time teachers is appropriately certified within a particular content area, and they also pick up electives. Each teacher has a standard caseload parallel to our teachers that are in the brick and mortar. Oftentimes when we see a demand with our e-learning courses or Scottsdale online courses, that again, we need more students needing English or more students needing math, then we've had the flexibility in the past of offering a 0.2, 0.4 to some of our other brick and mortar teachers who pick up extra teaching opportunities. We call those extra teaching periods. This will be a challenging year in that we're going to have to very carefully look at the needed FTEs to meet the needs of our families and students that choose to go and take online courses. And that's going to have to be the shift in the staffing from what we have with brick and mortar over to Scottsdale online.
Okay, so thank you very much. So the other question, kind of rolling into that, is will we be trying to accommodate teachers at specific schools? Let's just take the Laguna example, and there is enough online students. Can that well, this may not, maybe it only happens in middle school, high school, but it won't be happening at elementary. But let's say there's a class of 30 kids at Laguna. And are we considering using the Laguna teacher to teach that third grade class at Laguna so that those teachers who choose SOL could keep their school and keep their relationship with the students, in hopes that when we went, online, whenever it might be, back to full-time in person, that then they would see those students in school and they can say, hey, that was my third grade teacher, not that it was some other. Are we able to do that, and are we considering it?
So, and Dr. Menz and I just had that conversation today. He, expressed the desire to really work to find those wins in these models, to be as thoughtful as we can. And with having an administrator that oversees this program, we can run reports of who wants what and where students come from and where teachers come from, and try to really be strategic in the best interest of students. So that's the kind of creative thinking that we want to see with each of these models, because we want to optimize them for our students. So yes.
All right, thank you. My last question is going to kind of follow up with what Board Member Perlberg said, and that is, I do have a concern that even though I love the idea that we are giving our families options, that we may be taking on too much, and that we will be stretching the resources we have to do it well. And so when you went through the thought process of, do we narrow it to 2? What were the reasons that you decided not to, and you felt that we would have the resources and that we actually could do it well?
Number one, the Teaching and Learning Survey really expressed an interest throughout stakeholder groups of a hybrid model. Just letters and emails and phone calls from stakeholders that were really afraid to return, but going full online for a semester was not their choice. They wanted a little bit of both. They wanted to feel a little bit more control over the amount of time on campus and all of that. So to really honor the 18,000 people that took the Teaching and Learning Survey in 4 days, and the pages and pages and pages of comments that were included in that survey with such heartfelt passion, we challenged the subcommittee to come up with a hybrid model, and then we had to bring it to the principals, and then it changed because we had to make it a reality, but we didn't give up on it. Now, we could send out this survey, it's not a survey, this choice option information on Friday and asking families to choose, and we're going to have to look at the interest level and the viability of hybrid K-5, K-8. We know we can offer it in high school because it's something that we're already doing, and it doesn't need a certain amount of students to do it. So that is middle school and high school, not an issue. So, but Do I believe with the support of the teaching and learning coaches that we can make this flipped model work? Absolutely. I would never bring it forward if I didn't believe we could really bring it home.
So what are you going to do differently? Because we know from the survey that as great of a job as we did, transitioning to the online in the fourth quarter, there was still a lot of room for improvement in instruction and participation. And so without any additional staffing, how is it going to be different?
So we had time. We learned a lot. We learned we needed consistency, additional consistency district-wide, that in trying to honor what was happening to us and that was so very new, the flexibility and autonomy was too broad, and that teachers and staff and students really wanted that explicit instructions. So what we would do differently is, A, we had time to plan, we had time to build the models, we had time to examine the data and really understand where we needed to improve. The LMS, Learning Management System, is absolutely key. The time to actually train teachers how to do this, we had one full day of training to put this together. So we also really want to focus on being transparent with those expectations to make them tighter, and also provide them in advance so that you wouldn't be surprised if you had 15% off on an assignment that next day. You would already know how we're handling all those policies in this new environment. We cannot answer every single question or every single situation or nuance, but we want to provide guidance and norms and still honor individual situations, because we understand that families are dealing with illness, they're dealing with economic hardships, and we need to understand that not every student at home is going to have the same level of support. No matter if we provide them a device, we try to reach them through a caring adult. It's not the same as someone sitting side by side and learning it with them. So the differences are the professional development, the transparent and consistent expectations, the time to put together 3 learning models, the time to train not only staff, but students and parents. We would like to train them on these models, to focus on best practices of the models. Online learning is just not using your computer. How do you keep students engaged? How do you make sure that they're progressing? Not every student is a great online learner, because it does take self-motivation and pacing, and not every student can do that well. So these are all lessons learned from the Hanover survey, from the teacher's strong voice and staff voice in the committees, that has driven our work forward to build these models for our new normal. So I am confident that all of that will be enhanced.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that answer.
Sure.
Community will be, and teachers will be happy to hear that as well. Board Member Perlberg.
Thank you. I just want to touch base. I appreciate those questions very much. And the one thing that kind of stands out, as far as we all know, the hope for those who choose, including our staff and our families, who choose on brick and mortar, on campus, we're all hoping 17th, but yes, we all realize that for a while, and who knows how much throughout the year, there'll be enhanced, I get to do that, enhanced remote learning or distance learning. One of the biggest hurdles, obviously, last quarter was assessment, was meaningful grading, testing. Let's be honest, taking that test. How do you know the students doing it themselves? We are really actually knowing what they know and what they don't. Are there tools? I mean, obviously, SOL has done this for a very long time. Will those tools that they use for informative assessment and truthful assessment, will there be PD to help our enhanced distance learners, teachers, for that period of time?
That's a great question. And teaching and learning leadership just reached out to Dr. Sakos today to say we need to recruit some Scottsdale online teachers to our cadre of trainers for enhanced distance learning. Because as you saw on some of the slides, they have secure assessments. They have figured that out. It's been 10 years, and this Florida virtual content is tried and true and used by so many school districts. But the key is, the special sauce is our SUSD teachers, our SUSD standards and curriculum, and so that's what makes it really unique. Just like a textbook is a textbook, it's what you do with it, right?
Our teachers will have that additional professional
Right.
development.
And I'm really excited about these discussion-based assessments. And I appreciated the comment about showing families what this would look like, because when you're engaged in a discussion with other students or teachers, you really have to show that you know your stuff, and you can't have someone fill in the bubble for you on that. So those are just some of the enhancements that we already know Scottsdale Online has, and now we have the time to bring them to the enhanced distance learning model while we need it.
Yeah, and I know our families will be very, I think, excited to see that new hub that will be very helpful getting over the hurdles of last quarter. And hopefully, obviously, there was a lot learned as far as timing, so that you don't have my poor friend who has 4 SUSD students all at once, and every teacher seemed to choose the exact same time to have their online. And so hopefully, obviously, lessons have been learned that way too. So very grateful for all the work again.
Thank you. Thank you. And we already have an acronym for enhanced distance learning. Thanks to board member Greenberg yesterday. He called it EDL. And I said, what's EDL? And he said enhanced distance learning. So it already has an acronym.
Because we need another acronym.
Exactly. You all love your acronyms.
Okay. Board Member Kravitz.
I have some 2 questions for Mr. Rayler. Has there been any consideration of providing additional shade structures at some of our campuses? Some of them have some permanent ones, but I had gotten some requests about shade structures to provide alternate spaces for teaching. Granted, in August, a shade structure may not do much for you, but the egg doesn't fry as quickly under the shade structure outside the shade structure.
Shade structures would be a very large mountain to climb.
And by shade structure, I also mean temporary.
So shade, well, we could look into renting tents, but when we build shade structures, like for the bus drop-offs and stuff like
Those are
that,
expensive.
typically those are a 12-week lead time.
Right.
And some of them, depending on their size, require permitting and some various things. So that would be a very tall mountain to climb. We can certainly look into tents. If you remember, we served lunch out of a tent at Pima for 6 months. That was a tall-ish order because we started with swamp coolers that didn't work and then transitioned to air conditioning. So not insurmountable, but would be a challenge.
So, but if a campus has a request or is interested, if they
Yeah,
can
we could
contact you.
certainly look at it and see if we can brainstorm them away from that. Auxiliary gyms will make great space, especially at the high school levels. We can buy the liner that we put on the floor to protect the floor. Much easier, much cheaper than building tents and all of that. So we will absolutely work with the school sites to figure out the best solution possible.
Okay, and then also you mentioned that we use electrostatic, not we, but the Royal we use electrostatic cleaners to clean our classrooms. So as it was explained to me, electrostatic cleaners you don't necessarily see a result, or your classroom may not look pristine as a result of an electrostatic cleaner.
That's exactly true. To clean, you must touch.
Right.
and electrostatic is just a sanitizing process. So the chemical is sprayed by means of electrostatic. It attaches to all surfaces. It doesn't just lay on the top, but it'll actually attract to the bottom, the rails, the legs, everything. And that's the advantage of that. But it is not a cleaning process, it is a sanitizing process.
Because there was some concern that some classes weren't being cleaned last spring, and I don't know whether that is true or not, but will there be some sort of checklist in each classroom for, is it ABM or vendor, to
Yes.
show that classroom, somebody was in there,
Yes.
and, hopefully
So
they've cleaned the classroom?
contractually, they have a list of things that they're supposed to do. We're going to have to evaluate what some of those things may need to come off of that list temporarily to take care of that daily extra cleaning, because they're going to have to focus on this instead of that. For instance, high dusting happens once a month. Maybe that high dusting doesn't happen but once a quarter, so that we can take care of those things. So we'll be looking at that, and yes, we will provide, just like at restaurants and Target, where they have a checklist, they can just initial and date it when they're in the classroom. Yep.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. Do you have a question for Dennis Reyes?
No, not for Dennis.
Could Patty Beckman go next?
Absolutely.
Since I believe she has a question for
Yeah,
Mr. Reyes.
absolutely.
Thank you.
So with regard to the cleaning supplies, I understand what the district is going to provide, but, and the protective gear, kids show up without a mask or they lose a mask. Who's providing this stuff? Are the teachers going to be buying their own masks? And for these, are we going to be providing a certain number for them to have in the classroom?
Right now, we have, the original order was 20,000 masks, like Member Perleberg is wearing, and then we bumped that up to a total of 60,000.
And the classroom supplies, as far as day-to-day stuff that the teachers walking around wiping down in between the big district cleaning, are we going to provide that as well?
Yes, we will provide the spray bottles. What we came up with, because every time we talk to purchasing and our suppliers, the handy wipes were more and more challenging to get. And so we thought, well, we have in stock a pallet full of a product called Oxifer. And so we're going to, and that is we just pour it in a bottle. So the facility coordinators are going to have plenty of stock on hand, and we've ordered spray bottles for every single classroom in the district. And so the next best thing is the tri-fold hand towels that you could use one at a time rather than the rolled towels that become challenging for folks. So we've ordered those as well. So we'll have supplies of those in the classrooms and all the different spaces, so that if they feel, hey, we got a few minutes, we're going to just kind of clean up our classroom, then they can do that. And then we'll refill those bottles on a daily basis as necessary.
At the high school level, particularly, the passing periods, is there going to be given extra time? Are we going to be cleaning off some of the door handles and surfaces and the bathrooms in between passing periods? How are we going to?
So in our plan, we provided a detailed cleaning schedule that will have our facility coordinators and our FSWs going through the campus and sanitizing. And again, cleaning is one thing, sanitizing is something else. So aside from the electrostatic, we are also buying spray bottles, the kinds that most people use for weeds, but these will be brand new. And we'll put the product in there. And so the facility coordinator and the FSW can literally just walk the campus and spray. And so as they're walking around, they'll spray that, and that hand sanitizer or those sanitizers, everything has what you call a dwell time. So if you look at your Clorox wipes, if you look at these, they really need to stay wet for a certain period of time. So when people think, well, they didn't wipe that down, well, we don't want to wipe it down. We want to leave it there so it actually activates and kills the germs. So there will be a lot of walking around and spraying, a lot of it.
One last thing, I'm asking you things that the community members have brought to me that I find interesting that I don't have an answer for. Lockdown drills and fire drills with regard to social distancing and a bunch of kids all at once.
So by law, and I don't know that anyone's changed that, they have to happen. So we'll work with the schools about where they go. There's a lot to a fire drill, as James can attest, a lockdown drill, where you go, you can't go out front, you gotta go out back, you gotta be here, you gotta be there, you gotta be a certain distance from the building. So those will be discussions that we have with the principals. I know James will be very in tune with that because he's the one that helps them through that process. But yes, they have to happen, and we'll just have to figure out a way to spread them out and try not to have all 2,000 kids at Desert Mountain all in the same place at once.
I'd be interested in hearing the answer at some point of how we're particularly, I mean, a year ago, that was our prime focus, is how are we handling this, et cetera. And I want to definitely hear how we can do that effectively and safely and what you come up with. Thanks.
We'll work on an answer for that for you. I can just tell you that they typically try to keep them closer together, more for supervision, accountability. But you look at a campus like Desert Mountain, they've got a baseball field, they got a softball field, they got a practice field, they got a football field. So maybe they need to spread that out, but we'll work through that and make sure we get you a good answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And to bring up that point, I think that's the point we're hearing from our committee, is that there are all these nuances and protocols, and they want to be, and there's so many of them, they could either slip through the cracks or not be done at all, and they just want to be assured they are. So are you planning on putting together a list of the guidelines and having that available if somebody really wants to see it? Or is that just too much to ask at this point in time? Like,
well, I know for me, while you guys were torturing Dr. Guerin, I was just taking my own notes, things that, you know, in the hustle and bustle of the day, I'm not thinking about, but as I'm sitting here quietly and listening to you guys, I'm listing all the things that I need to address with my staff, with the facility coordinators, with the principals, that have to do with building services. So James and I work closely all the time, so we'll make sure that that's added to our list. But you're right, you could lose sleep for days thinking about all the little teeny tiny things that we do that most people just take for granted.
Right, and that's my expectation, is bringing these up tonight was just to put them on your radar, not necessarily for you to have a perfect answer for them.
correct, not to have the perfect answer, but I will say, which no one...
That answer wasn't perfect?
You're perfect, Dennis, you're perfect.
Yeah.
But, and no one will be surprised, but especially something on fire drills, that should be documented, right? And we will have it because it has to be distributed to all 29 campuses, and each one's going to be a little different, so it would be documented that we would be able to have. Did you have any more questions? I have one quick one because I think it's going to be something you had mentioned, that each classroom has audio enhancement, system. Is this new, or has that already been in the classroom, so it just needs to be mentioned that that's what's on time?
All the teachers know that it's there. Yeah,
all right, just for the parents that don't.
It's a little amplifier, probably the size of a little tape deck, and they've typically got 4 speakers, and the teacher either has a lapel mic, but that was one thing when I very first got to Scottsdale, I thought, wow, every classroom has these things. And it is amazing. Teachers can literally talk at this level, and it really makes it good for kids to hear.
I think, well, thank you, because
Didn't they come with the smart boards, I think, when our district got a lot of smart boards, didn't they, or was it later?
I wasn't here back then, but I know that Debbie Spalding has done a fantastic job, certainly at the new schools, making sure all that technology has been replaced, and that we're, because they connect the new digital displays to, it's amazing stuff. Kids need to be in the classroom.
So before I call on Board Member Greenberg, I have one last, put it into your head. I know it's going to come up. We're using all these new sanitizers that may not be, will have new chemicals in them. We cannot please everybody, but what we can do is at least list what those chemicals are. So if any community member wants to know what's in them, that we would have that available, just because their children might be allergic to that chemical. The good news is they'll be wearing their mask, and that will be somewhat protecting them. Maybe not their skin, but at least from inhaling them. So.
Yes, the two chemicals, we have identified the two chemicals in our plan, and we would make those safety data sheets available. That was actually one of the components of our plan, was that people don't go out and buy their own stuff. If we get too many folks just buying things and we don't control that, then we could end up in a situation where it's toxic or it doesn't work for someone. So we want to make sure that we manage that, and we've got the product in-house now, and it's a peroxide-based material, so it's not bleach or chlorine. So, but we can provide that information for everybody that cares.
Thank you. Board Member Greenberg.
I don't have a question for Dennis, though, so.
Does anybody else have a question for Dennis? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Guerin, just a quick question, because it did come up in one of the emails as a complaint about Scottsdale Online and potentially a hybrid model. For our seniors who do decide or are considering Scottsdale Online for their final year or a hybrid model, where will they graduate from? Assuming graduations can even take place, but the diploma itself, just because it did come up in an email.
That is a great question. And we are working to understand the governor's orders. Dr. Menzel is working with other superintendents in the Valley, and I've had that discussion with Michelle Marshall and Dr. Bachna, because typically when you are in Scottsdale Online, you're enrolled in Scottsdale Online as a school. When I read the governor's orders, it says a student should not have to withdraw from their school to learn online. So we have to work, we have systems in place that are all behind the scenes related to funding, related to creating classes, related to grading, that we can be absolutely flexible and responsive, but we have to make our systems work so we can know where a student is, roster them, assign them a teacher, grade them, take attendance, get ADM for them, and so it's enough to, really, we're navigating that, because what we would like to do is find a way to, behind the scenes, and Dr. Bachna is really talented, and she can jump in because I'm probably not going to explain it correctly, but assign them like they would be assigning a class, but keep them in their home school, but still be able to have that other piece of the puzzle. So we're hoping that we can manage that behind the scenes so they can still stay attached to their home school. And if Michelle Marshall or Dr. Bachna want to jump in, but that's something that we're exploring and navigating. We have a lot of unanswered questions ourselves.
Yes, that could be possible. We don't have it answered right now, but yes, we definitely can look at that. And we understand that concern. I think Member Greenberg, I've gotten that same question from someone as well. So thank you.
Okay, and thank you. I appreciate that. My other question is this goes back to the governor's directive, and we might not know, but I had been given the impression that for at least K-5 online learning, do we have to provide space for the students to do that in our schools?
So when you read the governor's order, we really worked to try to interpret it. And again, I did rely on the expertise of our in-house attorney, Michelle, thank you, because there's different ways to interpret it. Some interpreted that there has to be a 5-day-a-week in-person option for every model. And once you really dive deep, you realize that's not the case. Every district has to have a 5-day-a-week model. So as a school district, if schools reopen and I only decide I'm only teaching virtual, that is it. I would absolutely have to open a lab to provide some opportunity for that 5-day-a-week in person. We have full return 5-day-a-week in our model, so we are good. That doesn't mean we're not going to try to get creative. The high school principals anticipate problems before they even arise, that an AM or a PM student might show up on campus, and so wouldn't it be great to have that drop-in lab with social distancing or someone who wants to catch up or have some guidance. So all those innovations to the models with our creative leaders will happen.
Right, because obviously parents might not be able to pick up their student or need a place for them to be. Okay, right. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Board Member or Vice President Beckman.
Going back to the Scottsdale Online, I just assume, can you speak to someone that's enrolled at Scottsdale Online and athletics and participating in teams and clubs and all that kind of stuff? Are they attached to their school? So how is that going to work? Yeah?
So again, Dr. Sackos or Nathan Slater, but they are, the program has to be NCAA accredited, and it is accredited program so that they can participate in their homeschool athletics while being on Scottsdale Online student. Did I explain that correctly?
And Dr. Sackos was just making her video visible, so I think she's available. Maybe not.
Dr.
Yes.
Sackos?
Sorry about that. Yes, I am available, and Dr. Guerin did explain that if I am a student that resides within the Desert Mountain boundaries, and that is my home school, and I opt to participate in Scottsdale Online, full-time online student, I am eligible per AIA to participate with the sports associated with Desert Mountain High School. The social emotional learning team did talk a lot about ensuring students that perhaps choose an online full online model for a variety of reasons are still very much connected to their community. So we know that the AIA guidelines would allow our athletes to still participate. And we also know that team is working on different ideas to keep our kids connected to their home school, again, to keep that relationship.
Okay, so I need a little clarity. If you have an open enrolled student that, for instance, is a junior, and they spent 2 years playing football for one of our schools, and they're open enrolled, and now they're not comfortable going to school on campus, and they enroll in Scottsdale Online, are they no longer able to play for football for that school, or baseball, or whatever it is?
President Beckman, that's an excellent question. I would need to seek clarification on that.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Perlberg.
I mean, I appreciate asking the question. I guess I'm kind of confused, and I'm not trying to be flippant at all, but if you've made the choice for your family because either you have safe health concerns or if you have people at high risk in your family, and you've made the choice to go online all the time, I hope the expectation wouldn't be that you'll be able to safely play football. So, is that,
Let's not use football. Let's say you're on Scottsdale Online in the fall, but you play baseball in the spring.
Right.
And we go back on
so it's
line. So let's just use that as the scenario.
All right, I guess, I was just trying to understand, like, how would you be choosing to do one and the other, but, okay. And again, I'm not being flippant.
Right.
There's so many questions that are gonna come up, and I guess that's an interesting one. If I can jump on real quick, I did have just one clarification you stated earlier about our high school, the hybrid model. And you did say they can choose the classes that they, I want to be on campus for this one, but I can do this online easy. They can choose that easily and do already, correct?
So they already have schedules right now. And what we don't want to do is completely start over with the schedules. So we're going to have to work very carefully with high school to really answer that question. What I'm hoping is that with their schedule, they could look at it and decide if they would prefer AM or PM. I absolutely do not. It takes really a year to build these high school schedules. And so to completely switch all of them at this point of time, wow. So what I'm hoping is that we ask students which AM or PM they would prefer, and they would look at their classes and current schedule and make a preference choice based on that. But really, the high school principals and the middle school principals have to make these complicated schedules work. So I don't want to promise something that we can't deliver. So that is something that we have to get into the weeds and layers with our building principals.
So it's choices, but limited choices based
I
on
can't
the reality
promise
of
that,
schedule.
but that is the vision and the
Right.
hope.
Okay, that's very fair. Thank you.
I also want to be very honest and transparent when we're communicating with families about the limitations of any of the choices, so they make the best choice for their family.
Appreciate that very much, yeah.
That brings up a really important point, 2 points. One is, how are we going to be communicating this to our families prior to them choosing? Because that little nuance there can be a real deal breaker, or not deal breaker, but really be a strong criteria on whether I choose that or not, depending upon, because I know what, as a parent, which classes I would want them to take in person. And it may not go to their schedule being AM, PM, and then therefore that would be the reason I wouldn't choose it. So how are we going to be communicating?
So we are meeting tomorrow with our incident command team under the leadership of Dr. Menzel and Dr. Sakos to really develop strong, specific communication to families with the decisions that we have and the decisions that we're still working on.
Thank you. So it's forthcoming.
Absolutely.
And thank you for your patience, Board Member Greenberg.
And I think Board Member Perleberg and I received the same exact email.
Well,
I
I don't want to start a precedent, so I didn't say anything, but
Are there any other questions? Do you have any questions for us?
I'm just
offering
taking
that up.
notes. I'm taking notes.
Okay. Oh, Board Member Kravitz.
Oh, I just wanted to make a comment that I know, from my experience, that with registration at the high school level, sometimes tempers flare and people lose their patience, but I would just like to ask especially our high school parents and students this year to give us a little bit of leeway and just a little extra ounce of patience while we work through the scheduling issues, because this is different. We are in a new world here, so thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Board Member Perlberg.
I just saw another question. We could sit here all night if we do this, but the idea of, these complicated choices, and with choices come a responsibility of becoming informed and all of that. Obviously, we already know many of our families are not online. They're not paying attention necessarily at this point, got their lives. How are we supporting our office staff for those families that just show up on day one, not really aware of the choices that they will have to make, and those families who aren't online, aren't responding to the email or however it's going out? How are we?
We're going to be calling. We're going to be calling families just like we did in Q4 when they were not engaging. So we really need to know. Families that don't necessarily make a decision, my belief would be we would enroll them in full return, because Scottsdale Online is a very specific choice, and hybrid, again, is a very specific choice. So I think that would be our default, but we don't want to assume that. We are going to make every effort to call families. We also have families that are new that come and just register right before. So I appreciate your comments about patience and flexibility, because we have built schedules and staffed accordingly, and now we have to try to make them work with new models and staff for the new models. So complicated because doesn't even begin to describe it.
Sure.
Thank
And
you.
I would just, this is Melissa Sakos. Oh, this is Melissa. I just want to add that, the board's recent decision to lower the student counselor ratio, in addition to providing additional social workers on our campuses, is really timely because we'll be able to additionally support our kids during and post this pandemic. So our counselors do report back per their contract earlier than our students, earlier than our teachers do. We'll definitely utilize our support staff to help reach out to those families that perhaps are not quite informed.
Thank you, Dr. Sakos. Vice President Beckman.
So you triggered a question because a community member brought this up to me, and it may be for Dennis, with regard to our office staff. Was there a kind of a comment made about how we're going to need to inform our community about visitors or things being sent to our schools so that our office staff is not having to police kind of that?
Yes, absolutely. The one thing that we're trying to do is reduce risk. And the more adults, the more visitors to the campus creates more risk. So the lunches, the musical instruments, the homework assignments, all of which gets dropped off. And literally at some of the high schools, there's a person that's volunteering behind the desk just to accept the mass volume of those deliveries. And so our committee was unanimous on the fact that we need to stop that the 200 plus visitors, because it's not just them showing up, but they're touching and no way to sanitize whatever they're delivering. So it was a very strong message that we needed to stop the visitors. And as much as we love our volunteers and we want them in the classroom for reading programs and everything else, at least for the time being, in the short term, we need to just have the students and staff on the campuses, and that's it. And that's our recommendation from the Ops and Logistics Committee. Yes, sorry for missing that. Good catch. That was perfect.
Great way to end the discussion. Let somebody else has another question. Well, I would like to also then give my thanks, Dr. Guerin, Mr. Rayler, Mr. Tron, your committees, your subcommittees, all the work that you've done is very much appreciated, and know how time-consuming and mentally straining it is given the challenges that are before us, and especially the unknowns and the uncertainties. So thank you. I'm still on. So then we will now continue to our next item, which is the consent agenda, unless, did I miss something? No? Okay.
Oh, we had other work.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Board Member Kravitz moves. Do we have a second?
Second.
Vice President Beckman. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We will now move on to our action item. We have an action item A, which is approval of a special study session on July 9th, 2020 at approximately 5 p.m. So I'll explain what this is about. We've had some board members ask for a special meeting to be called on Thursday, and Dr. Menzel and I talked about it and would like to introduce it tonight for two reasons. First, it is we're approving whether we want to have the meeting on Thursday, and then I'll give the two reasons why, and I'll give each one individually, and we can have discussion in between. The first was for the governing board to make a decision on the teaching and learning models that were presented as a recommendation tonight. We would take, the idea is we would take the next 2 days and hear comments from our public and our employees. And we have that new avenue in which to hear comment, which is on our SUSD website right now called Let's Talk. And then obviously we can receive emails as usual. And so that is the first reason to have a meeting in 2 days, which will be on Thursday. And Dr. Menzel will talk to why he needs a timely response.
Thank you. I'm still getting used to taking the mask on and off. But first, I'll just say that during the course of the meeting, when we launched Let's Talk, we already have 155 responses, and that includes students, parents, staff members, making comments, suggestions, raising questions, exactly the kind of thing that we were hoping for, the sort of feedback based on the conversation that we had here that we hope would trigger other ideas and thoughts. It's really helpful. So that will help inform our next steps. We also launched a thought exchange, which is an open-ended way for people to share their thoughts about what their concerns are, and people can rate those things. That's a secondary communication tool. It's a soft launch today just because we want to really enhance the opportunity for people to make their opinions known and have their voices heard. There are two things that jump out to me as being really important, and if we don't have it up, but slide 31 was our recommendation slide. And in that slide, we actually made a statement. They can pull it up, good. The last bullet on the slide says, when the governor permits schools to resume in-person instruction, SUSD will transition to the full on-site and hybrid models. So as of right now, the governor has indicated August 17th is that date. There's a lot of concern about whether or not we're able to do it. We've said multiple times in this meeting we can't envision that date won't get pushed back, but let's assume for a minute that it doesn't. There is within Arizona law the ability for this district to be able to make its own decision, to take other factors into consideration. And so one of the things that we should be contemplating is whether or not, if the decision to open moves more rapidly than we feel comfortable with, does the governing board want to take into account other data that would inform it? Vice President Beckman, you talked about the 5% infection rate as one metric. There could be any number of others, but we haven't made a determination. The initial recommendation is when the governor permits us to do so, we could. I have some thoughts about actually buying some time. I'd like a week from the time the governor says we can open so that we can manage an orderly transition from enhanced distance learning to in-person learning, to make sure that we've got all the logistics taken care of, from bus transportation, food service, all the other things. So our planning will be in place to pivot to in-person when we're able to do so. But moving from the enhanced distance learning to online, if we had a protocol in place that said we would have a week before we actually operationalized it, it would make sure we could take care of the loose ends and hopefully make that as smooth as possible. Again, those are things that would be worthy of consideration, but we're not ready to make a move at this juncture. The other thing that's actually really important for the plan going forward regardless is that expanding Scottsdale Online to K-5, there's an additional cost. We need the board to approve that because it exceeds the $100,000 threshold. As Dr. Guerin mentioned earlier, money is available within the technology department budget, so it's not about asking for new revenue, but it's authorizing the expenditure. And at the same time, there's also a Genius license that falls a little bit below the bid threshold, but very close. We want that to be approved at the same time. We think that's appropriate. Again, falls within the same budgeting parameters, but important to make the Scottsdale Online K-12 program fully functional and connected with our other systems. So if for no other reason than that, it would be important to meet, but I also believe our community is expecting some clarity about next steps. And for those two, I hope that is what you were looking for. And if I missed something, please forgive me. It's been a long meeting.
No, that's fine. The first one I talked about is that before we can do either one of those, we need to approve the recommendation for the models that we want. Correct?
Right.
And although the governing board is not required to do so under state statute, it was felt from our administration that they would like the governing board to make that decision. It sets a good precedent. It shows the support that the governing board and the community would have behind the decisions. So We're bringing that up tonight to find out if that's what the board would like to do, and therefore, we would bring it as an action item and up for approval on Thursday. The reason for the timing is because of SOL. Because if we chose SOL as one of those models, the teaching and learning department would like to immediately start that procurement process. Is that fine, Dr. Sharon? That's correct. So that's the reason for the timing, not waiting to the end of July. We also are looking at starting school August 10th and having teachers come back at the end of, and counselors at the end of July. And everybody is wanting to know what those models are, no more so than the committees, because they now need to do the detail work to get the guidelines in place, right? The second part, and I'll just take it back, the second item I referred to was the item of making the decision on the date or dates to reopen and how that decision will be determined. And that was the reference to number 3 with the example, if the governor chose to open on a certain date, do we want to exercise as a governing board our authority to choose that date or to choose another date? So that was the second question that we would be discussing and maybe determining on Thursday. Board Member Greenberg.
Question on timing as a topic with the procurement process. If we don't have if we don't really have anyone for K-5 wanting to sign up for SOL, but we pay for SOL, well, I guess it wouldn't really matter because we can always stop the procurement process. When will parents make their determination? That goes out Friday?
We anticipate the survey goes out Friday. Given the preliminary indication of 20% selecting it, and knowing that even in an enhanced distance learning model, some of the Florida virtual curriculum could be used by our elementary teachers, we believe that securing those licenses at this point, and the procurement's actually done. The board previously approved Florida virtual, so this is just getting the licenses for K-5.
Okay.
So it's really an expenditure more so than procurement. And yes, it's a calculated risk because of timing, but in order to get the professional development in place and be ready to roll on August 10th, timing is of the essence, because that means we'll be 31 days away from the start of the new school year.
That makes sense to me. Thank you.
Board Member Kravitz.
With regard to the date to the return, we are currently preparing, though, to return online for August 17th. Your concern is if the date gets pushed back, pushed further down the road.
So there are two things. Right now, based on what the governor's executive order, we would be able to return on the 17th. And so we're in person for in-person instruction, right? We can start, right, we return.
Right, but I mean on campus.
For the on-campus or in-person option, that's true. The thing that I put on the table for consideration is just allowing ourselves a buffer for that pivot point. And that's why I suggested a week. And in part, it could depend on if and when the governor makes other announcements of delaying it, right? So we first heard that he was going to set August 24th, but then when the executive order came out, it was the 17th. We could see an extension of that. It could be after Labor Day. We don't know. We have to be nimble and flexible. I just think that being able to contemplate the potential of a buffer week to ensure that when we actually return in person, we've taken care of all. I mean, we can plan all day long, but there's a difference between planning and implementation. And when we know that's going to happen, the communication needs to be clean and consistent with all of the parents. We need to make sure that from a transportation perspective, all the routes are finalized and ready to go. If we're after Labor Day, we need to make sure that all of those other items are in order. We're preparing for that return in person. We want the return in person. I just think that there's some reason to consider that little buffer, but we'll prepare based on what the initial recommendation was.
Vice President Beckman.
I agree, and thank you. I think it was important tonight to kind of go through the 3 different options and let our community hear what we have heard, understand them a little bit more thoroughly. Paradise Valley did the same thing. Their board met for, I think, 4 hours, and then they had another meeting beyond that where they talked about a little bit later, the process itself and what their recommendation was. And the second point regarding when the governor permits, again, I agree with that. I think we need to, as you pointed out, give ourselves that time to react and not just have this date put out there that could be 3 days from where we were at the moment, or 2 weeks, have it be on our terms in the best interest of our students. So yes, I agree with both, and thank you for entertaining the thought of the second meeting.
Board Member Probert. So I guess a lot of thoughts, and I'm sure our community are going to leave tonight kind of having these same thoughts. It's 2 days of uncertainty. We can all live with that, I guess. And yeah, we're going to get a lot of feedback, and that's good. I wouldn't want to extend that any longer. I mean, I think a lot of our community that I spoke with was ready to know tonight what we're doing and hear it, and just start to process it and accept it. But it's fine to get that feedback. I guess I'm a little confused on the start date. I mean, as has been stated, this governing board is not a medical expert. There's no medical expert on this governing board in this district. We are relying, as every district is, that our state government, our Arizona Department of Education are working with the experts to set the right date. I guess I'm a little concerned I think we all accept 17th is a wish, we have no clue, but at some point we have to say we will be ready by this date, and even if it goes beyond, I don't think it's quite right to say, even if it becomes the 24th, oh, well, we still then need another way. If at some point we said we were ready on the 17th, we should be ready on the 24th, or we should be ready whenever that date is set. I guess I just think our community members will question that. If our governor keeps pushing it down, are we then saying, as it keeps getting pushed down, we still will need another week beyond that, no matter what?
I wanted to entertain the possibility. I didn't want to say that we would be fixed, that it would always be a week later. I wanted to create some parameter, to have a conversation about that. And that was part of, I'm also watching to make sure we stay within the parameters of the agenda item here. I was proposing that we talk about that at the meeting 2 days from now to get clarity about how that might look. I was giving you a for instance of how that might look in order to create some flexibility for the district. That's all. Not saying that it would be fixed or etched in stone that would be the case. We may not always need a week. I was thinking if it's in August, we might. If it's in September, it could be different. The context will really matter at the time.
Board Member Greenberg.
I am mindful of the topic discussion. Since this is just about approving whether we want to have that meeting, should we go ahead?
Discuss those items.
Yeah, should we go ahead and decide whether we want to have that meeting or not? There's a good point there saying people want certainty and we're expecting it tonight. I do think that there is quite a lot of certainty there. It's mainly just about since we didn't have it for this meeting, getting the board to okay that or not okay that. So that's more of a formality, but I think the community is pretty set, and it does give us just a little bit more time to consider some of these comments, and I'm very happy Let's Talk has been implemented. But should we have that meeting? I think we should have that meeting if it's been asked for. I don't see an issue with it.
Vice President Beckman.
To your point, I agree. I think you were kind of making the discussion point that I want to have Thursday night, which is, are we going to stay with this exactly, or do we want to have a little flexibility there? And I know I appreciate that it would be Thursday, because I know we've given a recommendation to our community. I know they have an expectation. I brought that up earlier. It's 2 days from now after we get to hear from them from what they get to see tonight. So hopefully, that's not too long, but I think that is the discussion I want to have. Is this exactly what we want to do, or do we want a little bit more flexibility in it, and also take into account the feedback we get from Let's Talk?
Then I will make a motion that we
approve a special study session, well, not right, special session meeting on July 9th at 5 p.m. at the MDA here. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Greenberg, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Nay? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. That is our meeting, so we will adjourn. I move that we adjourn our special meeting of the Governing Board today. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz, second. So nice not to have to do individual roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. The special meeting of the Governing Board on July 7th, 2020 is, now I need my glasses. Adjourned at 8:21 p.m. Thank you very much.